But it's okay. I was just sure. Okay. So let me know if you have any comments. It's arguably all sorts of things. Also, David. So this guy in SAA, my good friend is also saying, his team said, oh, like, I'm studying from Bella, like, and someone else was like, oh, like, she's like, a representative of the regions, like, Usac and stuff, like, I'm like, she's the one person.
Got a huge ass splinter.
Do you need a Band-Aid?
Nah, I'm good.
I actually have Band-Aids.
Let's try to rip her out.
I got new shoes and it was cutting up my feet today, so I had to go to Usac for Band-Aids. Thanks, Maple, for that. They were on sale for $5 and it's all higher, like $40 for a pair of shoes. I figured it out. The ones that I was wearing for all the C-back ones literally fell apart and the ones that have. The actual soul fell apart. Oh, yeah, I can't get that money for that. Yeah. I would agree with that statement. So I asked my manager if he can set off the water. I think if you log in, it should be able to start. Yeah, if you're in America. I've already logged in. Active like the last time. Oh my god. I have Southland credit union. Yes. Bethany was here. Still are at 9, so.
That splinter is like, it's probably not easy. I have the right one. I got
That's kind of late though. So hopefully oh, Jason. Yeah, that's. Okay, so it's back to get back to the car. Well, she needs to.
We've already come.
I have all my finals for Friday. Oh, yeah. Awesome. I'm so so message. Okay, I was thinking. So I'm not studying it yet because I mean, at least it's not out there. Yeah. I would do that. Right.
So I expect like one
capital contingency. And so it's still left over there for our meeting.
I call this meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. So I know that lots of you have finals this week, and I would like to keep tonight's meeting moving as efficiently as possible. So I'm just going to ask everyone to speak intentionally and succinctly, and to respect our applicants as well. So you can keep this meeting as efficiently as possible. Cool. All right. First, the attendance sheets have already been passed around. So we have two sets of minutes to, or we have lots of sets of minutes to approve. The first set will be last week's meeting, November 20th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
Yeah, then wait for like 2.5 minutes, or is that informal?
Jessica just got here, so you're good, actually. Okay. So we have lots of sets of minutes, so let's just get ready to do those. Okay, so tonight we have the minutes from November 20th, the minutes from November 27th, the minutes from October 16th. Are that all those minutes? And October 9th? Has everyone reviewed all of those minutes? Do we want to wait a few minutes? Keep saying the word minute. Okay, so maybe we'll wait a little bit to do the minutes. Yeah, okay. Just do that before we lose the forum. Okay, so are there any amendments to the agenda for tonight? Should I turn it on?
Okay, can somebody do this for a second, please not, like, just record it for a second?
What?
Can somebody, are you writing it down, so I can
Yes.
write it on the agenda? Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, we're striking agenda 1. You can strike the strike the sorry, Jessica, do you want to add a discussion item?
Yeah, just about, like, switching over, like, more maybe.
Sure. Okay, so we're gonna add a discussion called Council Communication Platform. Cool, under Jessica's name, so that will go after this Bella's discussion about media access. Okay, so far the reports that have been stricken have been General 1 and TSR. Any other officer member reports that would like to be stricken? Any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended? The discussion is called Council Communication Platform, and it's under Justin's name. Bella motions to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Aisha? Okay, we'll move into vote for roll call beginning with IDP,
Yes.
EVP,
Yes.
General 1, General 2,
Yes.
General 3,
Yes.
CEC, yes. CAC, yes. FAC, FSC,
Yes.
SC here, TSR. Great. A vote of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. 9-0-0, the motion passes and the agenda is approved as amended. All right, we will now move into public comment. So as a reminder for I'm sorry. We are now going to move into public comment. As a reminder, there will be 3 rounds of public comment. The first is no audio recording, no video recording. The second is audio recording without video recording. And the third is both audio and video recording. A few community guidelines before we move into public comment. The first, please speak respectfully to those in the room. We ask that you challenge ideas and not individuals. We also ask that you use gender inclusive and gender neutral language and keep in mind folks' pronouns. We also ask that you speak intentionally. One of my favorite quotes from CAC, every time they do Word on Wednesday, they say freedom of speech does not mean freedom from accountability. So know that this is a public forum, your words will be recorded should you choose for them to be, and proceed accordingly. Any other community guidelines that folks from the public or folks from council would like to offer up personally? Great, all right, so we will move into the first round, which is no audio, no video. I'm gonna wait for Robert to turn that off. I'm just going to move my hand around the room as a reminder. Every public commenter. Great. All right, we'll now move to the second round, which is audio without video. Last call. All right, our last round will be both audio and video recording. So over here. All right, last call for public comment. All right, we'll end public comment at 7:09 p.m. Next, we will move into special presentations. So we have 3 tonight. As a reminder, special presentations. You'll have 15 minutes to present. I'll give you time warning, so I'll give you a 10-minute warning, a 5-minute warning, a 1-minute warning, and then a full time. Then you'll take 5 minutes to question and answer. We can vote to extend if needed, but again, we're going to try to speak as succinctly as possible tonight. The first item on the agenda is our welcome to the new, or I guess not that new anymore, but recently appointed Director of the LGBTQ Campus Resource Center, Andy Kofina. Thank you.
Hi folks, how's it going? My name is Andy Kofina. I use the pronouns he and his and them theirs. As Claire said, I started this July, actually as the new director of UCLA Resource Center. First, I want to thank you all so much for letting me the space tonight. I know it's limited time, it's a very stressful time of year for everybody, so I'm very grateful for the space. I just wanted to offer a little bit of information about myself, about the center, the vision of the center, kind of where we're moving, and answer any questions. I know that Usac has supported the Campus Resource Center for a very long time, and we're very grateful for that support. So I definitely wanted to sort of open up the conversation with opportunities for us to continue to collaborate and work together to support both of our different areas here at UCLA. So as I mentioned, I joined UCLA's campus this past July. I previously was at the Princeton University's LGBT Center for the past 5.5 years, where I was doing all kinds of work similar to what I'm going to be doing here at UCLA as it relates to programming and events that support lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, asexual, queer, questioning, and romantic plus communities on campus. That includes undergraduate students, graduate students, faculty, and staff, and affiliates as well. And so a lot of the work that my role is tasked with, but I also did some work around Princeton in addition to doing programming and events, is really related to policy and advocacy change in terms of supporting the UCLA campus community. So the LGBT Campus Resource Center is located in the Student Activity Center for those who are aware, or we're located in the basement level 36. And so our center provides all kinds of different support around LGBTQIA activities. So we provide allyship trainings for LGBTQ folks and our allies to learn more about what gender and sexuality mean in the context of moving about LGBT people. Those trainings are offered for students as well as for faculty and staff to support professional development and learning around what are ways that our place can be more inclusive for LGBT folks. We also offer a ton of programming and events. I know we've got all kinds of support from different folks in the room around as well. So some of those events include our annual drag show. We do a lot of work, all of our work really is centered on student experience. And so all of our programming really comes from student-initiated efforts, and we support the students that work in our center, which we have over 20 students who actually serve in our center as student interns and volunteers. And so they largely organize our events and programming in addition to our full-time staff as well, which we have 4 full-time staff members. So again, we do events and programming. So the drag show being an example of that, Cookies and Queers, which we host in the fall, is an example of that. So these are some events and programs you might be familiar with. And then we do smaller events too that highlight certain specific areas around gender and sexuality. For example, we had a speaker for intersex awareness week a few weeks ago. We spoke about their experience around being an intersex person and also a trans person. We also have other kinds of services in our center. So we provide a meal voucher site for meal voucher distribution. We have drop-in counseling for LGBTQIA students. And so what that means is that our drop-in space for counseling actually does not count toward the CAPS maximum. So if a queer student is going to seek support within CAPS and they meet their maximum, our drop-in hours are not actually a part of that. So students can continue to receive services in a space that we feel is affirming with folks, many of whom identify with the community themselves. We also provide academic counseling, other kind of levels of support, case management, things like that, so students can come to us directly, knowing that we have a resource and expertise in LGBTQI as well. As I mentioned, we have over 20 student interns and volunteers that work at our center. Those folks do all kinds of things that really are the sort of meat of our center. And then not only do they help us with our programming, our events, and things like that, but they serve our front desk, greeting folks, welcoming them into our space. They work on our student desk answering phone calls. They do all kinds of things from helping us advocate for certain policy changes to running our programs and events, et cetera, as I described a little bit. So again, our work is really centered on student services. When I think about the LGBT Center moving forward, what I would love to be able to work with our staff and our students on is really, our center has a very long-standing history, particularly as it relates to our programming and our advocacy. We're consistently ranked the top LGBT-friendly campus within the country and the world, as well as the top trans-friendly campus. And I think that our students and our professional staff historically and currently do an exceptional job to continue to maintain those statuses and those sorts of things. What I'd like for us to do is even look a little bit deeper. So I've been here since July. I'm meeting with students every week, asking about what are their experiences, what are they feeling here at UCLA, what are the gaps in their experiences here. And I'm finding a lot of them, especially our transgender and non-binary students, especially our students of color, are experiencing a lot of different gaps in terms of institutional support. Some of those things look like policy issues, systems issues. So, for example, thinking about how they have a preferred name policy in place, which is fantastic. I know a lot of advocacy, probably some folks in this room as well, but help to implement that. I know for sure actually some folks in this room want to implement that. And even though we have that policy in place, there's still more room to grow. In that, in class rosters, students' legal names still listed on class rosters. So what that means for our trans and non-binary students is when they go into class, their name is outed, their legal name, right, is outed to their class members, and that roster is distributed. Students are sometimes afraid to post on their online portal for fear that their legal name will be posted on there, and so may not even participate in the online forum. So these are some systems issues that a lot of my role is tasked with doing advocacy and support in combination and in collaboration with students. So I would say, especially to this group, if there are different areas of advocacy or gaps that you're learning about in your experiences or with your peers, please work with our center for really trying to create the most friendly campus and inclusive campus when we think about gender and sexuality. The other thing that I have in mind too with our students and our staff is our center historically has always been really rooted in intersection social justice. So not only looking at gender and sexuality, looking at race, looking at ethnicity, looking at citizenship status, looking at disability, all these different mental health, all these different things that we know impact and inform our experiences here at UCLA and the world. I know that our center has done a strong job of that in the past, and so I want to be sure that we'll continue to do that by continuing to center the experiences of queer trans folks of color, trans and non-binary students within. If you look at some of the CSIRO data that you can read online, that said LGBT folks, as well as our external review, and in a lot of the conversations we've had with students, those are the areas, and if you look actually nationally, those are the gaps of support that we're finding. We're finding that students are having microaggressions in the classroom, not only around gender and sexuality, but also around race, ethnicity, issues, and citizenship status, and all these other facets of their identity and experiences. So that's another area that we are highlighting in our work at the center. I mentioned a little bit around advocacy for trans and non-binary students. That's going to be another piece that we're working on, and really getting our center, because I think like when you look at our mission, look at our mission statement, our mission was written a long time ago. So it's about what are the ways we can look at the center's work and ensure that the outside world is seeing that racial justice and social justice at the core of our work. And so how can we ensure that that's being put outward? So we're going to be working on our mission statement and ensuring that everything that we do is thoughtful, particularly around intersection of social justice. So that's some of the work that we're working on now, the vision that we're headed. Again, I would love to work with this organization in your individual capacities as a group. Whatever would make sense for us to continue to advocate for LGBTQIA folks here at UCLA. So thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have. Thank you.
What do you need minutes of time? You guys have 7 minutes for questions. So I would like to start.
Is there like a main vision for Carnegie? Because like QA reached out to us to do peer camping,
And so I just wanna know if there's like something the whole week advocates for, or if it's just like a event by event.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I would say, that question really should be directed towards QA, but from what I understand, it's around awareness. So it's like bringing folks in community around awareness around QA issues. If there's a specific theme for that week for this year, sometimes they might do themes for the actual year, depending on what it is. I don't know if they define that.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you so much for being able to come out today and everything. We really appreciate it. I kind of wanted to go off of some of the stuff you've been on. It's just with USAC, specifically, how do you find ways that we can really support you in tangible ways? IDB has worked on the Gender Gap Clothing Drive for 2 years now, and it's been a really great experience. And I know that we specifically definitely want to help out in any other way that we can. I think the same applies for all of USAC. So are there any real ways that you see that there might be a lacking of that, and how can we go about fixing that?
Thank you for that question. I think the thing that I can see USAC being very helpful with us is around the policy and advocacy change. So thinking about, for example, the way that I was describing how our preferred name process is very helpful, but it's also the way that it's structured right now is causing some real difficulties for our students. So if there are ways that USAC can help advocate, for example, if we're removing a legal name from being printed on class rosters as well as on the back of our ID cards, because that's causing a lot of stress for our students. So things like those very concrete efforts would be very, very helpful for USAC to advocate with us for changes.
Thank you.
So both I and the EVP at Santa Cruz identify as queer. So one of the things that we want to do, because I'm kind of from the Bay Area, is we're going to try to meet with Evan Lowe, who's the chair of the LGBT caucus. And so I just want to ask if there are any specific state policies that y'all have been working on, or that you think of off the top of your head that would be helpful for us to push.
Yes, so when I think of state policy, I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot to mention, there's something called the California Gender Recognition Act, which comes in full effect on January 1st of 2019. And what that law, as a state law, what it's going to require is that all systems that the state takes, including all systems, policies, forms, here at UCLA, must have a non-binary option, including we're asking for gender identity. So not only must we be asking for men and women, but also non-binary folks. And that's going to literally affect every single process on UCLA's campus. So that's a huge one, because it's also not only about inclusivity and the affirming of our non-binary folks, but it's also about state law and compliance. And I feel as though a lot of folks are not really aware of how large and far-reaching that implementation process is. Because we have something like the registrar's office that contains a lot of demographic data, personal student data, but not every system on campus pulls from the registrar's office. So while they might be in compliance, right, and I know that they're working TV, there's hundreds, probably hundreds of thousands of systems across UCLA that also need to be in compliance with this requirement. So that would certainly be a state law that I would encourage you all to do some more research on, and I'm happy to chat with you about that as well. So,
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for coming out. I know I speak on behalf of myself and my colleagues, we're very appreciative for the work that the center does. And if you ever find yourself needing support from USAC and any of your initiatives moving forward, please let us know. Barbara and I can be reached usually as another member of the council. So thank you again.
thank you all so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to leave some flyers in my cards here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next special presentation is our UCPD monthly update from Lieutenant Kilgore. Take it away.
Good evening. November was very, very busy with a lot of events that were happening on campus. So what I would like to point out is that I know there was a lot of thoughtful discussion around the NSJP conference that was held here. And with the significant and effective communication that happened with campus departments, and especially with student groups involved with this, and UCLA SJP leadership, the event was very successful and it was safe for all involved, those who attended and those who demonstrated as well. And so for that, we're greatly appreciative of all the help that you all had and the discussions that you've had leading up to that, and the thoughtful time that you put into making sure that that word was spread, that people were respectful all matters that were occurring, whether you agree with the issues or not. Upcoming next week, as you all wrap up your finals, will be the Emmy Room. So if you are choosing to take part in that, I will be out there too, not running. Still working. So we look forward to seeing you all there, and we wish you all happy holidays, a much needed, I'm sure, break that you're looking forward to, and hopefully you all will stay warm. I'm going back east to see my family in the West, so I will be freezing. But I'm quickly escaping to Fort Vallarta after that, so questions and comments that you have for me?
Well, thank you for your update.
All right, thank you.
And our last special presentation comes from Cowper. Thank you for being here.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for listening to us and for inviting us here. So we wanted to do a brief presentation reviewing our quarter, looking at all the different campaigns and projects we've undertaken. Also looking forward to next quarter and what's coming up. So to start with CalPERS, our organizational structure, just to give you all an overview of who we are, what we do. CalPERS, we are a statewide student-run nonprofit that works on public interest issues. We train student leaders to act on problems that are facing the public, that are facing all Californians, and often where there's a powerful special interest standing in the way of what the public wants. So how we do this is we combine student support and pressure with the expertise of professional staff and advocates at the state level and nationwide in order to make sure that all of the passion that we have as students translates into policy victories. So statewide, we have chapters at 8 UCs in CalPERS, and we do have a nationwide student PERS organization, of which California is one of the states. So in California, there's a board of directors that's made up entirely of students. So it's 36 students from those 8 UCs, including 5 who are elected here from UCLA. I'm one of them. I guess we didn't do introductions, my bad. So I'm Nico, I'm the chapter chair here at UCLA.
I'm Safara, I'm the External Affairs Director at UCLA.
I'm Nick, I'm the vice chair here at UCLA.
And not present, but I'm sure if you haven't met them yet, you will soon, is Kyle, who is our Internal Affairs Director, and Eva, our Secretary. So those are the 5 voting members on our Board of Directors here at UCLA, and our Board of Directors decides on things ranging from the budget to our campaign selection, deciding our lead campaigns and approving which campaigns can be run on our campuses. And we also decide our statewide priorities, what we want to focus on as an organization. And then additionally, from that Board of Directors, there is a statewide executive committee elected of 6 members, a statewide board chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and 2 members at large. And Nick is currently serving as a member at large on the statewide executive committee. So here at UCLA, like I said before, we have 5 board members. And then in terms of our campaign work, each of our campaigns that we run has a campaign coordinator who works with our campus organizer, works with our interns and volunteers to make sure that there is a plan in place to make that campaign be as effective as possible, that there are committed volunteers and interns coordinating each aspect of that campaign so that the team is as cohesive as possible. And then we have interns coordinating specific portions. So We might have a grassroots intern who works with tabling events and photo petitions and making sure that we're building up the public support from students in order to make big changes. So Nick actually started as the grassroots coordinator of our 100% renewables campaign last year. And then in the spring, he became the campaign coordinator for 100% renewables. So it's a really great way to train students on all the skills that they need and help them develop into really strong, amazing student leaders who can continue to impact social change. So, of course, our campaigns, this is why we do this work. So this quarter, we ran several campaigns, and for our lead campaign, I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Yeah. So I ran the Save the Bees campaign this quarter. It was our lead campaign. So each year, our statewide, or each term, our statewide board of directors votes on our lead campaign. That campaign is our top priority. It's the campaign that we educate students on during our recruitment and pledge drives, and it's the campaign that we build support for our pledge drives. And so, yeah, this quarter, our lead campaign was the Save the Bees campaign. And this campaign is super important because bees are dying at alarming rates. With beekeepers reporting that they're losing 40% of their colonies each year. And this is really scary because bees pollinate 70% of the crops that we eat. So no bees means no food. So in order to save the bees and protect our food supply, we're working to pass a statewide ban on a class of bee-killing pesticides called neonicotinoids, as well as getting our campuses and cities to commit to going bee-friendly, which includes banning neonicotinoids, hosting educational events, and planting native plants. And this quarter, we've collected 1,900 petitions in support of a statewide ban on neonicotinoids. We had a No Bees, No Thanksgiving press conference where we presented all the foods that we have during Thanksgiving that are pollinated by bees. And we talked to media, including a photographer from the Daily Bruin and a reporter from CBS LA, about the importance of bees and how we didn't have bees we didn't have Thanksgiving. And also our Chief Sustainability Officer, Lee Katz, came to talk about the importance of pollinators and how she's working with us on the UCLA bee-friendly commitment. And we educated 6,000 students on this issue through our recruitment pledge drives.
And one more thing on the bees before we move on that I want to add, a quick update. We actually found out in the last couple days that our Santa Cruz chapter actually has spoken with one of the members of the state legislature up in Santa Cruz, and potentially we found someone who's going to champion our statewide bee ban, or bee-killing pesticide ban. And so we're very happy to continue with our progress on this statewide ban on neonics, and also working with our local Senator Ben Allen in Santa Monica, who was the last person to champion this bill. So our next campaign that we ran, which is one that I'm sure you all are familiar with, 100% renewable energy. So we know that climate change is a huge problem, from droughts to wildfires that have been raging across California. We've been seeing the impacts directly in our daily lives with every passing day. It's only going to get worse over time unless we do something. And we know that one of the root causes of climate change is the overuse of fossil fuels. So the best way to address that problem is to stop using fossil fuels and transition to 100% clean energy. So we actually started the quarter off with a huge win on SB 100, and we've talked about it a lot before, and we won't stop talking about it because this is the biggest climate change bill that has ever been passed in the United States. It was passed this year, just a couple months ago, and it committed California to 100% clean electricity across California. So we couldn't have been more happy to be a part of that effort. In order to make that happen, we collected 20,000 petitions statewide. We met with student leaders, with faculty, with admin, people like the chancellor at UC Riverside, who is moving the campus forward for 100% renewables right now. We met with several of our UC regents we worked with the UC Office of the President. And of course, on SB 100, we worked with our state legislature, including Senator Kevin De Leon, who was the author of SB 100 and guest speaker at our kickoff meeting. And he worked incredibly hard along with CalPERS to make sure that this passed through the state legislature. The last thing real quick on renewables is we also got that commitment for 100% clean electricity at the UC. So the UC made a joint press release with CalPERS announcing this commitment. And we were so excited that we were able to be a part of that and show them how much students really care about this issue.
So we also worked on our New Voters project. The Student Perks New Voters Project is part of the oldest and largest voter mobilization effort in the entire country. Here at UCLA, we worked with the Bruinsville Coalition. We shout out to the EVP office for working with us on that coalition. But with Bruinsville, we were able to register almost 2,000 voters here at UCLA. And we saw that turnout here when we looked at the 5 precincts closest to UCLA, the student having precincts. We saw that turnout increase over 5 times since the last midterm election in 2014. So that was really cool to see. And then we had a press conference with the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Mayor Gordon, and with Secretary of State Alex Padilla about the ballot goals. And we also kept working on this issue after the election. So CalPERS has been working on trying to get the LA County Registrar's Office to establish a satellite conditional voting site here at UCLA so that students can same-day register and conditional vote on election day 2020. And we've had a lot of success nationwide too with the student perks. Just in California, we were able to register 6,000 students to vote, and we were able to make 500,000 get out the vote contacts, letting students know where and how to find their polling places and letting them know about it.
We're also working on our affordable textbooks campaign. As you guys know, textbooks are ridiculously expensive. Publishers take advantage of students and raise prices up, and they force you to buy the textbooks by assigning access codes. So we're working with professors in UCLA to get to try to get open source textbooks. And just last year, Student Career they were able to pass a $5 million grant towards open source textbooks, a federal grant, and we were able to renew that this year. Now we're working on, we had a textbook day of action. We were able to get 39 professor sign-ons as well as surveys from students to collect data. And we also got petitions. And now we just want to work with libraries to connect librarians with professors so they can actually give them the materials. Oh yeah, and I am Miriam. I'm going to be coordinating this campaign next quarter.
And we also have some organizational highlights, just fun events and really cool things throughout the quarter that we wanted to highlight and show off because they're really important.
So each quarter we have a kickoff meeting during our second or third week of the quarter where we try to get as many students in a room as possible to learn about our work and get involved in volunteering and internships. So this quarter we had the biggest kickoff meeting at UCLA since 1999. We had 152 students in a room, and State Senator Kevin De Leon came and spoke to students and about the importance of student organizing and thanked us for our work to help pass SB 100.
And I'm sure you guys know that CalPERS runs a pledge drive every quarter. So we're completely student funded through a voluntary opt-in fee. So students opt in to add $10 per quarter to fund us. This is really cool because it's what allows us to hire a professional organizer. It's the reason we're so effective because 30,000 students pledge CalPERS across the state. And that allows us to get our mandate directly from the students. And so this quarter, we ran pledge drives during Welcome Week and also during the quarter, and we were able to get over 2,000 students to pledge. That was really cool.
So also early in the quarter, we had the opportunity to speak at the Regents meeting that happened here on campus. So we thank the Regents for their work in order to help support us on voter registration. But also we wanted to thank them for their commitment to 100% clean purchased electricity. And then I also got the chance to speak with then Lieutenant Governor, now Governor-elect Gavin Newsom, about bee die-offs and the importance of saving the bees. So.
And we also just recently had our fall statewide conference, so students from all of the CalPERS chapters at 8 of the UCs got together at UC Santa Barbara. We had workshops, helped to train new student leaders and work on UC skills, as well as we were able to talk about our statewide priorities and campaigns, and decided on a lead campaign for next quarter.
Yeah, so looking ahead to next quarter.
Yeah, so our lead campaign for the winter and spring quarters, decide on that. Winter and spring is like one term for us, is our 100% renewable transportation campaign. So yeah, transportation accounts for like 40% of our carbon emissions here in California. So we're going to be working to get the California Air Resources Board to vote yes on a proposal we'll be voting on in January to commit the state of California to having 100% electric public buses. And also working to get our school districts and cities to commit to 100% electric buses by 2030. And then we'll also be continuing to run our No Beach, No Food campaign and our affordable textbooks campaign, as well as adding our Zero Hunger and Hold Antibiotics.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Yeah, just a really quick thing about the 2 new campaigns that we're running, just to give you guys a quick idea. Our Zero Hunger campaign, I'm actually going to be coordinating that campaign, and we're going to try to get the UC system to commit to a Zero Hunger policy, because 40% of UC students are food insecure, and we have enough food that no one needs to be going hungry. So we're going to try to get an administrative policy addressing that, as well as our antibiotics campaign. The routine overuse of antibiotics in the livestock industry is causing antibiotic-resistant diseases, which the CDC predicts will kill more people than cancer by the year 2050. So we're working to get fast food companies to stop purchasing meat raised with the overuse of antibiotics. We've already got a bunch of big ones like Tyson and Subway to commit to this. And we're working on trying to get fast food companies to buy beef raised without antibiotics now.
And that is time, so perfect timing. Thank you all so much. Any questions for Calter? Jamie?
Which one of you two is to blame for having that meeting at the end?
Well, thank you for coming in, for providing us with regular updates. We really appreciate the work you do, and let us know what you can be covered.
Thank you all so much.
All right. Next item on the agenda is an appointment. So this is the final appointment to the Student Conduct Committee. The student is Chloe, I might mispronounce her last name, is Ramadan, could be wrong. And she will be appointed for that term. I'm going to go ahead and read the position description for Student Conduct Committee just to remind everyone. Openings, there's 3 positions, 2 have been filled. The first was by Karen and the second was by Kevin Beadle last week. And it's not a stipended position, provides hearings for all cases referred to it under the Student Conduct Code, meets when there is a case to be heard, including summer breaks. Any questions about Student Conduct Committee? Okay, well, the last appointment is Chloe. We sent you all her application and resumes, so hopefully you have a chance to review that. And AOC should have it over the weekend to do review as well. So I will go ahead and turn it over to AOC for their recommendations. Robert.
So I vote yes. I think that specifically the resume, I didn't feel like was very like. I didn't feel like it was like directed towards the conduct committee, but I thought that the application really made that clear in the sense that it seems like there's a real devotion to the student conduct committee and the true Bruin values. So that's why I voted yes.
Thank you. Aisha?
Reflecting back on like true good values and the
Jessica?
Kind of what Robert said, I was actually really proud of reflecting on Chloe's application wasn't so genetically like people want to use that. I think too, her not being in North Kansas teenager, and then just the experiences are so different than most people that you know. And so for that, on top of like what I just said, I think she has a really good understanding of true really values. And so I said, yeah, great.
Thank you, IRC. Any other comments, questions, concerns about Chloe's appointment to the student product committee? So this is a consent item appointment. I'll ask if there's any opposition. If so, we can move into a more formal discussion and an action and vote. So is there any opposition to Chloe Tomanow's appointment to the student conduct committee? Well, Chloe is appointed. I'm asked by consent. Great. All right, we'll now be moving into new business. So we have a bunch of funding allocations. We'll just move through pretty rapid fire. So first is winter BOD allocations. I don't believe Christy can make it because she had dance. So Ryan.
So Christy couldn't be here tonight, but we had our winter BOD hearings last week, Wednesday, November 28th and 29th in Ackerman. 31 organizations applied for winter BOD and we allocated $60,100, with an average allocation of $1,937.
Do you have a copy of those allocations?
Yeah.
I don't know if they were sent out.
I didn't get the vital.
Would you mind forwarding them to us? Thanks. Thanks, Ryan, for sending it along. Did you second that, Ryan?
Yeah.
Okay. Did everybody else receive them? Yeah. Those are coming.
I got these.
Oh, there we go. Great. Okay, so everyone has a chance to look over that. Great, okay. This is a consent item, so I will ask if there's any opposition. If so, we'll move into a more formal discussion and vote. Is there any opposition to the winter BOD allocations? Great, that passes by consent. Right, next is contingency. Ryan, you're next.
Okay, so this week we have 8 weeks supply. The total required was $53,900. Total requested was $8,963, and our recommendation was $5,800.
Is there a motion to approve the contingency program? Oh, Usac or non-Usac program?
No.
Non-Usac, cool. Jay,
I motion to,
to approve.
contingency funding of $5,822 to non-USAC.
Beautiful. Is there a second? Bella? I will move the roll call again with IUP.
Yes.
UP, General 1, General 2, General 3.
Yeah.
CEC, cash. That. MSC,
Yes.
and TSR. Great, by a vote of 9 to 0, the motion passes, the contingency programming is approved.
Do we know if there are SFS allegations?
Yeah, I also have those.
Great.
So there were 2 groups this week, Real Partners and Dignified Data Story. The total requested was 3,000 and total allocated was also 3,000.
Right, is there any opposition to the SFS allocations for the week? Those also passed by consent. Great, and the last allocations are ASRF allocations, the viewers aren't here, so I will present on your behalf as a fellow member of ASRF for the management board, gonna be called. So we did have one application this week, it is $2,000 to the Usac Financial Support Commission for Jay's textbook scholarship program. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it.
Sure. Yeah, so FSC is trying to do a textbook study. Basically, what we hope to do is provide students with gift cards to the ASUCLA bookstore so that they're able to purchase a textbook that is required for them for the following quarter. With an allocation of $2,000, we're looking to get $50 gift cards, which means that around 40 students will be receiving a gift card to the ASUCLA bookstore. And I actually spoke to ASUCLA folks today this morning, and they said that it's like good to go, and they're going to be working with us, and we're working with this as well. We appreciate it.
Great. Any other questions for Jay or for me? Is there any opposition to the ASRF allocations for the week? This will pass by consent as well. And on here, we have ASRF, the Academic Success Referendum Fund. As in the past years, has been heavily underutilized. There's a pretty large supply of money there. So if your organizations or any organization that you know about are putting on an event or program related to academics, please feel free to apply. The maximum allocation is $2,000, just keep that in mind, but there is a great funding stream of money for that. And we'll have a lot of money to allocate winter and spring quarter. Great, okay, so the last item of new business is entitled preliminary surplus allocations to contingency. So we're gonna move into a pretty preliminary budgetary surplus related conversation. I'm gonna do my best to provide insight. Those two are pretty unknown. Basically, I wanted to start with kind of dismantling some misperception around surplus. So I think because of what happened last year, having that large undedicated stream of money that we had student organization applications and hearings for, might have created some confusion about what surplus is. So surplus is not a funding body. Traditionally, it's not something that students and student groups apply to, and it's not something that's a formal hearing process in the way that was left over from the prior fiscal year that was not spent and was not dedicated by various referenda or other funding mechanisms. So I've heard like some talk of we're going to be applying for surplus, or we're going to encourage them to apply to surplus. That's not entirely how it works. Tonight we're not just going to talk about all the surplus that we have. We're going to talk about specifically a chunk of it that's $150,000 that, according to our bylaws, has to go through a specific mechanism. So I'm gonna let Ryan and Ward kind of talk about what that mechanism is for the $150,000, but the reason why we're talking about it tonight is so Ryan can have it to be able to open up capital contingency and just continue to plan ahead and forecast for contingency funding next quarter. Does that make sense so far? Cool. So Ryan, if you want to talk about that, and Ward, I feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, what part do you want to talk about?
Is there any chance to look at the spreadsheet? Should we maybe go over that first before?
Sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a way that I think starts to help people who are not trained to finances to sort of understand in a layperson's sense what it even is. So in a given year, the student body pays into all the various funds that you oversee. And the general intention is that that money is spent within that same year, collected from those people and spent on those same people. Now, it's not possible to, precisely spend all of those amounts of money, exactly. So, and a lot of what you guys do, or your funding bodies do, are make allocations to other groups that are student groups or, programs within your entities. And so those allocations, are potential expenditure, but are not in fact the expenditure itself. So one of the principal rules that has to be in funds when you have kind of fund based accounting, right, is that you can't spend any more money than you have. So you can allocate up to something, but we ensure that nobody has any way to spend more than their allocation. So you never have, you never come up short that way. So you're not going to hit zero. Would be normal in math that you would have remaining amounts of money, allocations that were not fully utilized. And there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these little allocations that have remainders. And so I think it's a good way to think of it as being that surplus, a lot of times is a collection of all of these remainders that were not able to be expended within the year. And as you finish all the accounting and identify where there are remainders, gather it all up, make sure that our accounting is reviewed by our auditors, our external auditors, to make sure what we call surplus. And when it crosses over in that way, then it can't be expended on the students that were there that paid into it. So it allows it to be sort of redirected in a few different ways. And that is, it's sort of a rare circumstance. Almost all of your money normally is kind of locked into very precise channels, and you have very little discretion to move it around anywhere. So the surplus is almost your singular opportunity for the council itself to identify sort of the path to that, to perhaps have some needs that you have identified from your seats that perhaps need to be addressed, and this is an opportunity to address those things. So normally the ideas spring from the table. That regularly monies from this are put into some programming funds. USA DoD programming fund, contingency fund, capital contingency. In fact, it's the only way capital contingency is funded at all. And one of the things that some of your predecessors have put in your bylaws is the mechanism by which you, what had happened often in the past is surplus can vary dramatically from year to year, just based on the vagaries of who was able to spend what and what is remaining. It can be high some years and low other years. So a bylaw was passed to sort of establish your Usac programming endowment, which is money that comes back to programming. And your bylaw sort of says when there's a high surplus year, you kind of take the peak off and you send it to the endowment if it's high. It'll come back later. But you always, in a pretty stable way, fund $150,000 into contingency, USA DoD programming fund, and capital contingency. That allows it to be relatively stable so that the student community kind of has an understanding of what the amount of funding that's available is, instead of it dramatically swinging back and forth in a way that nobody understands. And that is essentially, you guys potentially could be blamed for, why are you cutting this fund? When in fact, that's not necessarily what's occurring. You are simply receiving an amount that is the unexpended funds from the previous year. So that's where your bylaw comes from, that says, whatever surplus, the first 150,000 goes into the funding, into this mechanism. You could, beyond that, you could fund it higher. You could then, have some initiatives that you deal with or problems that you deal with that are, have a financial characteristic. And then the bylaw is going to say the remaining amounts goes to the endowment. So that's the overview, if that makes any sense.
And to just briefly chime in as well, I mean, once it goes to the $150,000 mechanism, there will still be a large pool of money. It's about $275,000, where some portion of that, according to our bylaws, can be earmarked for council initiatives. And so that's when we can kind of get to the talk to, if some of you all have offices or have projects that would like to apply or utilize some of that money, that's where we can start getting into that conversation. Or a council member can make recommendations that I want to be my initiative to support XYZ entity on campus. Does that make sense? So there are ways that we can redirect some of this funding back into
priorities that you all have as council members, that we have as a council wide, or other things that are underfunded. We can also put more if we want into contingency BOT capital. However, the expectation is whatever is not allocated, we can decide if we want to send that to the endowment. We can talk a little bit more about this in winter when this comes back up. We really just tonight wanted to vote on the allocation of just that $150,000, so Ryan can start planning. Do you want to add anything for Robert?
Sure, so I guess really briefly it might be useful to explain the numbers to everybody.
Sure.
So if we start off just looking at lines 10 and 11 very broadly at times our total revenues and total expenses. And line 17, you get the total surplus for last year, which was $980,000. So for our bylaws, there's a lot of money that's restricted and has to go back into the channels of income, so that's like a restricted surplus. So after accounting for those subtractions, the net surplus available for allocation, 43, is $425,000 roughly. So assuming that we follow what's stipulated in the bylaws and allocate the $150,000 to the three funding bodies, that would leave us with $275,000 to decide what to do. I know last year when this was finishing up, there was a lot of confusion about the numbers, what was clear, what was $600, everyone understand the numbers,
It's right in saying last year had a complication that perhaps later when we look at surplus again in winter, beginning winter quarter, we can go into more just to make sure it's clear why there were unique characteristics to last year's surplus situation. But there were unique circumstances. And the other thing, just Ryan walk you through the concept of restricted surplus. So restricted surplus is going to include things like in some of your offices you get what we call other income. If you had ticket sales or you fundraised and somebody gave you money that doesn't come from mandatory student fees, it stays in your office. You got a grant from something. That is restricted surplus, so it never leaves the intention of the donor or if it was a ticket sale, the organization keeps that money. So those are all forms of restricted surplus. And so you can't really move those funds around. They need to stay in their restricted path. But I think that we probably want to also, along with consider voting to approve the restricted surplus so that it can be made available to those bodies for whom it is restricted into their discretion.
Yeah, sorry, Ryan, the amount of money that would go back to Usac bodies after this 150 grand is put in, how much is that value again?
Sorry, the amount of money.
The money that is like restricted for Usac offices to use in.
It's not restricted.
Not restricted, yeah.
Available is $275,000 and $275,214.
Okay.
But again, there is a historical precedent that some of that goes to the endowment, and again, I think that is more appropriate to talk about in the winter quarter. We really just want to focus on getting that preliminary $150,000 into the mechanism tonight. Yeah.
So when would that discussion begin? Because I know there are entities such as like Clear Lines and Privately that really were thinking about trying to access that fund through one of our or multiple of our offices even. Do you know how quickly those allocations would be made and reported?
You mean dealing with the parts of this surplus that have not been
The 275,000, yeah.
It's a simple matter of when you put it on the agenda and vote.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Do you understand where the $150,000 is going and why we're doing that tonight? Right.
I think it would be useful. Do we have to vote for the
Yeah.
Okay, so then we vote for two.
Sure, so the restricted surplus is the $555,000?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just based on referenda and bylaws and things like that? Sure. Okay, so we're gonna be taking two votes then, and I'll ask for motions on each of them. The first will be a motion to approve the restricted surplus account of $555,702.49. The second will be to approve the preliminary $150,000 of the remaining surplus, to go through the mechanism for our bylaws. Does that make sense? I think you might have lost. Okay, we're good. Awesome. So is there a motion on the table? Let's start with the one related to restricted surplus funding. Aisha.
Surplus funding of $5,500.
Okay.
Okay, 5,500, okay, $5,555,702.49.
To the restricted surplus allocation. Okay, Ally, second. Great, we will move into vocal roll call begin with IBP.
Yes.
DP. Total one. Total two. Total three.
Yeah.
CC. Staff. FSC.
Yes.
TSR. Yes. Great, 50900, the restricted surplus allocation. Second motion, if there is one, to approve the preliminary surplus allocations of $150,000. Is there a motion on the table? Into the roll call beginning with IDP.
Yes.
EP. Turn one. Turn two. Turn three.
Yeah, sorry.
CEC. Back. Thanks. FSC.
Yes.
TSR.
Yes.
Great, 50900, the preliminary surplus funding of $150,000 is approved, and that can start being allocated to student programming, which is great. And that means the capital contingency will reopen winter quarter, so if anyone you know needs new furniture and whatnot. Here's your turn. Awesome. So, next we will move through officer reports. Hello. No, so unfortunately, in accordance with our bylaws, we're unable to vote on the resolution tonight because it wasn't sent out in accordance with the bylaws. Again, that doesn't indicate all my personal, like, I personally support the resolution, but we have to follow our bylaws, that's why they exist. And so we won't be having a council meeting next week, so we wouldn't be able to vote on it until week one, unless we were potentially to suspend the bylaws, but I worry because there haven't necessarily been student notification and student input taken into account about this resolution, just because it wasn't sent out and it wasn't publicized until now. So if y'all want to review, it's in Article 6 of our bylaws. It says very specifically in Section A, Part B, that the agenda and all items of business must be presented electronically by 5 p.m. 2 school days prior to the meeting at which the items will be considered. Let me see, there's another part about it too. There's another part about how it would turn into a discussion item without being able to take action.
I personally feel, and I know Dr. Geller might disagree with me on this, that we've, and I've been getting on email about this, we've suspended the bylaws a lot just by nature of not following the rules for submitting agenda items and submitting resolutions on time. That's not to blame any of you all, but basically every action item people have submitted has been submitted late and has been sent out late because it was submitted late. So I personally feel, and I don't know if people disagree with this, that it's not fair for us to not suspend the bylaws right now when for all the past resolutions that have been sent out late, for all the past financing, for all the past allocations have been sent out late, and we've gone through all of them. So I don't see why we would add more scrutiny to this one.
And to I sent the other resolution for the
we should make a personal point to by winter quarter, get all of our crap together and make sure that we're submitting it on time. But now that we've had that conversation, we can hold ourselves to it and like starting week one, organize.
Yeah, the biggest concern is really just so that way it can be shared with the student body, and so if they want to come and make public comment and voice. This is not the bylaws tonight, but just moving forward, again, if we want to continue to hold ourselves accountable and be transparent to students, there are some folks that probably were involved in making this resolution, there were some that were not, so if we can just continue to hold ourselves to a standard. And I know that we've all done this, right, extending things in length, but just trying to get better about it moving forward. So just to clarify with our administrative reps, we are able to vote to suspend and to vote on it tonight.
I can never endorse suspending the bylaws.
Yes.
Never supposed to be suspended, and there is no formal mechanism that's how you do that. If you do it anyway, you're gonna be doing it around two things. One, it is not on the agenda as an action item.
Yeah.
And you did not change that when you amended your agenda and voted on the agenda. So you already accepted your agenda with it not being an action item. Two, it wasn't submitted early enough to give campus and your constituents notification so that those who have opinions could be here to speak during public comment. And since there wasn't a single public comment about this, it suggests that perhaps there was not broad awareness of the topic. And it might be the kind of thing that you would like to let the population that not just those who were involved in drafting it, therefore knew what was going to be presented tonight. That's just my 2 cents.
And, you know, the Brown Act is very clear about notice and ample notification. And this, I don't think regularly suspension of the bylaws is bad precedence. And failure to have it on the agenda is just no.
I mean, I think that a policy we need to have, and I think something like I'll do, is just in the future, when people start submitting things late to me, I'm just not gonna include it on the agenda, and like, we just won't have these items on the agenda. Because as of now, like, what's been happening is that people have been sending it to me, like, not anybody, like, everybody has been doing this, has been sending it to me late, and then I add it anyways, and still send it out later on. Whether that goes for either contingency or anything else. I just feel like setting the precedent now would be unfair. I think setting the precedent of next meeting when it's a new quarter is like a very warranted way to establish this is the bright line for where we will not accept this anymore, is my personal opinion. I know that the admin will never endorse such an action. I accept that.
And another thing to keep in mind too is just, I guess, before we put that motion on the table, yes or no, is there are some legal policy related issues with the language of the resolution itself. So a point of a resolution is more to speak on behalf of an issue and serve as an official council statement of an issue, which I think this does to an extent. But also it's not necessarily to be a formal funding allocation. There's also questions about whether or not that's something that we're even able to or allowed to do. There is a UCI policy, and this is something that some of our representatives over there can be more about. To an outside non-UCLA organization. So I know this one is allocated to a group, but then allocated from that group to an organization. And that's not necessarily in accordance with UC policy. So what we can do instead is we can submit a written request to the chancellor signed by Usac asking to submit some of this money to this organization. But I'm also not entirely sure as well, maybe it's something you can speak to, Eduardo, where exactly this not entirely clear, and I'm also not sure from Ryan's perspective, if the finance committee is able to allocate money to an outside organization. To allocating money and resources to the migrant caravan that so acutely deserves and needs those resources. It's just a question of whether or not we actually can do it. And I would hate for us to pass a resolution promising something that we can't actually do. So I'm trying to figure out how we can provide these funds with support through a different mechanism or rewording the resolution that we support this funding allocation, et cetera. I know maybe that might not be strong enough as a clear allocation, but I just, again, we can't pass a resolution that violates UC state federal policy, which this somewhat does. Do you have any other, if you want to add more together, any other administrative?
There's basically a way to do it. I think the easiest way would be to use the council discretionary fund.
Okay.
Which there's like $19,000 right now. Sure. I believe that does require an action items allocated.
Okay.
Since the organization is registered and sold, you could allocate that money to them. And then the easiest way to do it would be if the student organization, like got a cash advance, bought supplies and donated those supplies.
Okay.
Typically, like SGA is not gonna just like write a blank check to an outside. Well, I'm gonna check to the outside utility organization. And the best way is to purchase the goods and then try to donate it to an organization that is serving these people. Contingency, CS community routinely provide funding for community service groups that provide donations to all types of communities.
What did you have in our project?
I think Ryan's on the kind of the right direction with that. The applicable University of California system-wide policy is PACOs, or policies applying to campus activities, organizations, and students, number 87, regarding the transfer of compulsory campus-based student fees, which is what your fees are, to non-university entities. And it does set forth that the funds that you collect from students cannot be directly transferred to a non-UC nonprofit unless first the chancellor personally approves educational benefit to the University of California's current students from that expenditure. So finding a way to give actual cash through Carson LA is going to be impossible or nearly impossible. Whereas if there were a different way that UNICA AUC then you could find ways to do that within policy. And your discretionary is one place that the money that might support that might come from. There might actually be a contingency application that is consistent with the proper contingency process. There might be something that you did through some of the surplus funds that are going to come forward. Because you would be doing it, you could do it then not via UNICA UCLA, but actually as a USAC initiative with USAC taking a stand. So there are ways you could look to do it. You just need a little time to do some of the research and figure out how to accomplish the goal that you set forth in a way that's consistent with the policies that aren't your policies or your campus, but are system-wide policies. So if you wanted to take tonight to start wordsmithing the resolution, not to necessarily take a vote with action, but to come up with language where you can put together your endorsement and support of the issues that are contained in it without the final let it be involved where you're actually directing FICOM to ignore their process and give money to a group to give to an outside entity, you could start to do something where you work on it and demonstrate the support for the issues, if that's the how to comply with the policies that exist and figure out which are the right dollars that you can use and how to use them to get support to this population that you're concerned about supporting. Okay?
There are some members of the public who might want to say something, so I can see my time here.
I'm from Americana here at UCLA. I'm pretty sure y'all are aware of everything that's going on, especially through the international border. I do want to clarify that in the first paragraph, it is a paragraph, it's an exit, so I do want to specify that it is a very humanitarian crisis. It's not just an issue of people, it's one of the U.S. as well, because of this history of U.S. intervention in Central America, these people are here in the first place. And given the conversation that I'm seeing where it's heading, I don't know, I really don't know how this space works. But I do want to say that some of us are going to put our bodies on the line and we'll be going towards the border after final speed. So if there's a way that y'all can transfer or allocate funds to us, like we will make sure that those funds will go to buy supplies, because now that the winter is approaching, like many of these people will need raincoats or anything that will help them survive.
Hi everybody, my name is Usac, I'm 4th year, and I myself was raised and still live in the Tijuana region, and in fact have been there since throughout everything that has happened and have witnessed it firsthand. I was actually there on Sunday when everything went down and saw all of the attacks on the Exodus caravan itself firsthand, and I can let you all know this, like Mesmo was mentioning, it is a humanitarian crisis and there's a dire for things actually right now. Another bus with about 700 people, mainly unaccompanied minors and women, arrived. And there's a huge need for camping tents, for blankets, for pillows, because these people are coming and there's nowhere to go. The city itself, and the infrastructure of the city isn't built to for that many people, and already as it is, the city is overpacked, and there's so-called shelters. And on top of that, you have Mexicans, because of the Mexican sentiments and Mexican hegemony, who are violently attacking members of the Exodus caravan, to the point where there has been physical altercation, to the point where people have been physically hurt, verbally abused. So in my own hometown of Playa, the first caravan that arrived was being comprised of trans and other LGBTQI members who were violently kicked out of the city. Where you have allocated contingency discretionary funds to a student organization, and it is up to the discretion and the autonomy of that organization to spend that money of how it is allocated. So it's still compliant with these policies. We saw that at Berkeley, where the students allocated $1,500 to their Central American Student Board, which then that board is utilizing that money to use funds. So I know that the resolution was ordered specifically to a community organization. That doesn't mean that resolutions cannot be rewritten so that they can be passed, right? So that these councils skip forward to rewrite the policy and rewrite the resolution. So I think that the easiest solution is obviously to make sure that when you guys allocate the funding, and from there students utilize that money to buy supplies, right? And it's still something that we can do as someone that crosses the border every day, and have been doing so for the last 3 weeks for my own research. There's still a lot of items that are needed. And I know personally friends on the ground right now who are there who say that we need as many supplies as possible. So if this council reviews about the community service, you know, we're still not only upholding UC policies, but also adding the UC mission of public service to the community, then we need to pass this resolution, right? And there is money every day.
I just want to see.
Hi, my name is Jerome. I'm a board member of Students for Justice in Palestine. First, I wanted to say that SJP wants to voice its complete solidarity with Unicorn, Palestine, and the Carabanistas. We find that the projects of imperialism that hondureños and salvadoreños and Centroamericanos away from Palestine, and that the treatment that Carabanistas have experienced at the border is very, very parallel with the experience of the Zawalis in Gaza, where both parties were fired upon by the colonial militaries. But I want to make a moral case where, okay, the president of the UC system is Janet Napolitano, who was the former Secretary of Homeland Security under Barack Obama. During her tenure, she really developed the infrastructure of like the deportation apparatus and really tightened border controls. And so a lot of the difficulty that Carabanistas are experiencing at the border is directly due to the intervention of our UC president. And hopefully we can all agree that like the situation at the border is unacceptable, and that as Americans on the safer side of the border, we have some responsibility to make things easier for people. And I think a small way to kind of make up for the fact that our university is led by somebody who's made this so difficult and violent for people is to make this small transfer of funds. I think it's a small thing that we can do to make up for this fact that Janet Napolitano is off the work. That's all I have.
I'm just gonna move my hand around and I'm gonna do it during public comment if someone wants to speak.
Yeah, I'm gonna be reading off my phone because I'll forget everything I say. My name is Alex Yee. I'm the policy coordinator for the Green Consent Coalition. BCC strongly supports the terms of this resolution. Members of the Exodus and Central and South American refugees in general have been for decades making a grueling journey away from dire conditions. They are a vulnerable population that often face food scarcity, abuse and exploitation, and physical and sexual violence, especially those among them who represent communities such as the LGBTQ+ community. As other people attending this meeting said, both this country in the process of imperialism and this institution have making it clear where they stand in terms of helping these folks out. So I feel like it is our obligation to stand on the other side. And as an institution with the power to make a difference, and as students with the privilege to have the access to resources where we can make a change, we absolutely should pass this resolution.
Sure.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrew. I'm a fourth year undergraduate. I'm with the Student Labor Advocacy Project. We support labor on campus. I would just like to say that SLAP fully supports the Usac passing this resolution and your total solidarity with the Carbonistas. We want to acknowledge that the exact same racial imperialist forces that have allowed for cheap labor in Los Angeles and the UCLA area, the racial caste system that we have here, is exactly, it comes from exactly the same place that forces these people from their homes and towards the border. And we would just like to make sure that the UC is in line with its values, that it is against racism, it's against imperialism, and that it's a progressive institution.
So this is a proposed action I will propose, feel free to adopt it as you see fit. I'm gonna propose that we do suspend the bylaws to pass the resolution, that however we take off the last let it be further resolved clause and just reword the one right above it, something about like USAC commits to providing aid, and just keep it like that. From there, I guess it would still be part of suspending the bylaws, so it's 100% non-control with that. I believe, the need is extremely acute. It's not something I believe that we can wait until we want to go to the court to allocate, especially because folks, the companies, those are facing very harsh labor realities this day right now, and will continue to do so in the next few weeks. So, if we would like to stick with the $1,500 amount, or not, whatever, up to you all. Again, you don't have the ability to make a motion, but this is what all we've done is suspend the bylaws to clarify, because it's not on the agenda. It's not in accordance with the guidelines that I read out earlier. However, that's the course of action that I'm going to propose. So it would be passing a resolution without that last levy for the resolve clause, and then allocating $600 or whatever of our discretionary funding to Unicef UCLA, and trusting that they will go through the mechanism of getting cash advance from SGA, providing supplies, whatever is in accordance with UC policy. How do folks feel about that? Eduardo, since this is your resolution, how do you feel?
What was the language you said to change? The last-
Just the last levy for the resolve, just take that out, and then make the second clause say USAC commits to providing aid. Just because the resolution is supposed to just be a little bit more like a statement of our position rather than a direct show of our funding allocation. But other than that, I don't see any need to make any changes. Just if you want to include something there, like via council discretionary funding, that's totally fine too, up to you. Again, if you don't have to amend this, this is your resolution, so I don't want to steal the show at all. But right.
I just want to give the guidance that, I mean, I think in order for this to work, you'll need I think we'll have to, I think your definition of the path being a little bit clearer to being kind of more direct path to the purchase of the supplies. I think the cash advance mechanism is probably not the most efficient way to do it. I think if we can get, funded, if you choose with a purpose, which is certain supplies, and then through SGA, you can probably put out a purchase order or get something to get those supplies purchased.
Is that something that should be in the resolution or part of our motion to allocate the funds?
Advances, that mechanism probably is not a good mechanism, but, if you want to specify, allocation for a purpose, which is supplies. And then, once council flags it for a purpose, then, I guess it needs an agent. I mean, it does seem like the motion comes from Gen Rep 3. I mean, I think it might be a good mechanism to flag that money to the Gen Rep 3 office.
Everyone, how do you feel about that?
Well, I wanted to like get public comment on that too.
Sure.
So like if anyone wants to talk or anything.
So when you want me like simplified, right, just because we are acknowledging the fact that USAC has very, the guidance for purchasing with student funds very limited under SGA. There's a lot of regulations that come in when you, constrain money to be utilized for certain line items, just because then you have a lot of restrictions that come in. So the freedom that comes with the cash advances is that you're able to utilize the money with the cash advance and then provide receipts. And it's a little bit more retroactive versus it being more restricted at the end. So I think that personally, we're wanting to provide this help rather than constraining the amount of supply and the support that we just directly and buy the supplies that are needed, right? We have to remember that these things are changing day to day, right? Literally, any of the conditions can change from 1 hour to the next. And right now, what a lot of people are doing with the shelters is that they're providing updated lists of what they need, right? And there's also a need to mention that there is current hunger strike that is going on with women and children, that they are in hunger strike because of the conditions, right? So we're able to even provide them more supplies that are not limited to the guidance of SGA. I think it'd be a little bit better within our own humanitarian endeavors, right? So, I mean, I don't know, right? This is my public comment. Obviously, I'm not on the table with like you all, but I do know that I have filled out many funding apps to use that, and the guidance are very restricted. We already have to go through a lot of barriers to get money just for events, and the fact that it's finals, like I'd rather not spend my energy thinking about what supplies fall under SGA guidance. I'd rather just go get these supplies and run them over to the border because there's a need.
Yeah, so, I mean, the guidelines are for purposes, so the guidelines are essentially putting conditions or purpose defined by council. So often these guidelines are the way in which we are able to ensure that the intentions of the council or the intentions of the funder are followed. So I mean, those are the purpose for those. If we use something like council discretionary, then it is not necessarily within certain funding bodies that have very specific guidelines. So most of your experience is probably based on trying to use certain funds that have certain defined purposes, and then you need to fit, again, within what those defined purposes are. So if you're choosing to use council discretionary, that is a pretty, that is a much broader, so whatever the other set of guidelines may or whatever the constraints are may not be as strong. Another thing I'm concerned about is a cash advance is never something that we really like to do in SGA. The problem with it can be that you're sort of at risk. I mean, if the student goes out and expends money on something that in the end cannot be reimbursed, they've gone out on the limb, they're liable. They're gonna have to make good. And I don't really want to end up in that situation. I just want to facilitate what we want to do here. And I think that if we have the money in the Gen Rep office with close coordination, we can probably get to those things. We can be pretty, you know, as long as you've got the signatures, SGA runs through 2 check runs a week. So you know, it's a matter of focusing on it, defining what your purpose is. And then SGA's role is to make sure that that purpose is followed. And you know, that is something that will need to occur here to use these funds, is we do have to make sure that it's done in a way that's you know, proper outcome that is defined.
So, what sorts of freedom do they have if using discretionary fund? Actually, like can you buy rainbows? Can you buy toilet trees? Can you buy like?
It might be easiest to say what they don't have. What they don't have is the ability to actually put cash in someone's hand.
Gotcha.
Or to purchase things from vendors that won't give receipts.
Gotcha. So there is like a much larger sense of freedom than, say, using a funding sources for specific things, right?
Yeah, okay. If you're getting things and we can demonstrate the money didn't go right into someone's hands, that in fact it accomplished the purpose intended with backups. I mean, that's what all the accounting reviews is for, to make sure that people didn't walk off with our money. I'm not saying anybody here would. But those what those mechanisms are for, to make sure that the money stays within the purposes that are defined. So again, yes, using the council discretionary, you can have pretty broad, you know, if this is crisis relief supplies, or maybe that's a way to define it. That's a pretty broad set of needs that people in crisis, refugees in crisis, would have. You just want to give some definition to what it is. And if it's got some breadth to it, that gives us the range of motion to get to what you're trying to accomplish.
In many ways, you're turning it into a community service project. And if you wanted to, you could even fund some of the transportation expenses for the students who are going to go and do the deliveries. So you could look more broadly at what you do and how you do it. There are just a few restrictions that would still have to be there. And they're essentially those key aspects.
Alan, would they be purchased through UCLA registered?
No.
Also then on that note, so then if you don't recommend using a cash advance, then would it be through a purchase order or how could students go about purchasing that?
Well, so I mean, I would recommend that, again, we're trying to move on the fly here, so that, you know, I would need to look into what we can do. I think some mechanism like that, I mean, I'm just anxious to put a student at risk of getting some kind of supply that they don't have a receipt, and then somebody who's an individual student's on the hook. So purchase orders, you know, we can work to define a way to do that, working through. I mean, I think if we choose to do that through one of the council offices, that might just help to expedite us to find a way to make sure that we can get that purchase. If we find a website or something, you know, whatever the mechanism that we can work, you know, I mean, this, again, this comes from Gen Rep 3. If whoever wants to work on that and take lead on that, we will work with his office and him supporting the community to get to those expedited outcomes.
Okay, so the understanding, oh, sorry, just one second.
Yeah, just real quick, I was wondering, and this is just like, probably, I don't know the rules as much, is there like a way that we can agree to pass the resolution? I don't wanna speak on behalf of organizations here too, but I do like, just for student well-being, just after taking out my own loan here, because that's a big amount of money to come on the liability of a student, and I feel bad that I don't know if we have to pass the resolution, like, if we can pass the resolution. Think about whether or not this is something that they really want. I just think like a huge financial decision about potentially like this being on a student and that being huge liability if they don't make money. I just don't know if like the organizations can have like think about it and discuss, but we can still pass the resolution saying that the money will be allocated. It's just giving them like a night to decide.
We would just have to formally allocate it. I'll see my time you after I speak. We would just have to formally vote to allocate it tonight because this is our last meeting of the quarter, and I don't think anyone really wants to call a special meeting during the finals week. So I think we can figure out the mechanisms of like whether it would be cash advance, et cetera. We just have to say like USAC will allocate $1,500 of its discretionary funding to X. So that can either be the Gen Rep 3 office or it can be Usac UCLA, whatever y'all would prefer. And then they can figure out with Roy, with Ryan, with all of the mechanisms, et cetera, how to get the money. Because I totally agree, it shouldn't have to come out of pocket. But I don't believe we have to necessarily dictate
the mechanism.
Okay,
that's what I was wondering.
Because we don't normally do that for contingency funding, so it wouldn't make sense to do it.
Yeah, because I just felt like if you choose to develop something.
Yeah.
Totally.
If I could just, if we're talking about the mechanism, and part of what I think we can all see here is some urgency and expedition that we want to try to put in place. I mean, if we're trying to find a path that we can get acted on most expeditiously, I mean, I think it's keeping it in if it goes to the Gen Rep 3 office, then it is a clear-cut place where it is, and we can act from it and extend it in the fastest possible. If we need to transfer it to a student group and then get a cash advance and then get a check generated for the cash advance, that is gonna be a slower path. And aside from that, then, you know, there's things that we need to do to make, I just wanna make sure that's expressing, not exposing students to personal liability. If we can keep it at an institutional liability level, and then we keep it in one of the council offices, I think that we can move it to the fastest possible execution and realization of physical goods.
Yes, so to address a lot of the concerns around healthcare, I know that I personally will be working closely with this, and I have had experience for now 4 years, working with student funding, working with the amounts of different funding. So I've actually managed a budget of $20,000 by myself with student funds for the youth events. And so I am very familiar with the stipulations, the guidelines, they come with cash advances, and in fact, for students of color, for low-income students here at UCLA, the cash advances actually serve for us to be able to purchase a lot of the things that we need for the event because we can't get reimbursed or because we don't have the access to fronting money, unlike some students on this campus. So really, if you give the cash advance to the org, it's just easier, right? And especially when we know how to handle these budgets. And even $1,500, like, that's a pretty standard allocation that you get anyways to contingency through other campus funding. So really, we already are managing these amounts of resources. We already are managing these monetary allocations. That is a very standard allocation that you would get if you were to put on any event. And I don't think it's fair to assume that Unica at UCLA is not going to know how to handle the budget, how to handle the monetary allocation. So you already are maybe student works on this campus, $50,000+ to put on their parties, to put on their events, to put on graduations. This is a very insignificant amount in relation to that. So it's like any other contingency allocation, it's like if we're giving us money for a program, right? So I'll just throw that out there. Just make those comparisons.
Again, some of my concern comes from concerns to not expose a student to undue liability. You seem very experienced in it and are accepting the liability. You know, what we need is the receipts. The receipts have to back up that this translated into physical goods. And if we got the receipts and you're familiar with the process and that's the quickest path, and you make the direct allocation to the group, as long as it translates into goods, it seems like we're.
I'm always welcome to provide my resume to you all. Like back it up, but I mean, I've been in these spaces long enough, and you trust students to put on $20,000 worth of events, I would kind of trust us with
I just wanna clarify, because I feel like my not really specific. So I just double checking again, because I definitely hear what you're saying. That was like my biggest concern. I wanna make sure like everyone in here is making the choice of the mechanism, not us. Like,
Yes.
I wanna make sure that because all we like are doing is allocate, like allowing it, but I don't feel like as Usac we should choose the mechanism. I feel like the other orgs should, and I just wanna make sure that like everyone here feels like it's enough time that they can make the decision of how they want to do the mechanism, how they feel that. So that was like what I was trying.
Yeah, I apologize again if I didn't fully answer. I think just an example, right, like when you apply for contingency, when you fill out the requisition, you can decide whether or not you want it to be cash advance, a reimbursement, a purchase order, invoice, etc. And that's on the student organization, that's not on us. So like when we allocate contingency every week, we don't say, I'm allocating $10,000 to SJP via cash advance, right? Like we don't do that, we just say we're allocating $10,000 to SJP. Sorry, you were just the first organization I saw before. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do the students here, specifically folks feel like you have the ability, okay, you definitely, you got it. Jay?
I have a question then. So in terms of the timeline, for cash advances, like if the money was to be distributed directly to the student organization, how long would the process take for them to be able to get the money into their hands, purchase the things, then because the finals a week and winter break is literally next week, so what can,
So, you make an allocation tonight, you determine it comes from, say, council contingency. I think we're gonna need a signature from Ryan on a rec, so a rec needs to occur, a signature from Ryan, we can expedite a check, we can get it within a few days. With it. And then the rest of it, I can speak to, the rest of it is checks in your hands. You know, we can get a manual check, we'll get a check quick, you just need the vote, and you need the rec.
So by what do they need to provide receipts? Because I also, because don't those student groups have 2 weeks or something, so that's will we get in winter on winter break then?
No, I think the SGA's going to.
Or 20, but I mean. Yeah, somebody here knew the deadlines better, but I mean, look, we can work with that, that should be like business days. I mean, if we shut down for winter break and you can't give anybody a receipt, that's not business days. That shouldn't be the hang up here.
So usually as long as you turn in your request to request a check to SGA by either Tuesday, when they actually need the checks, or Friday, those are the deadlines. And when you provide the receipts, because you are getting cash advance, you have to include like an IOU. So you get the cash advance, you purchase that item, and immediately after you get the receipt, you bring it to the SGA office. It's a very simple process. So the Tuesday Fridays usually don't change, right? I've done this before, years ago. You get the cash advance and you just bring the receipts up. There's like getting the money ahead of time so that you're not fronting money out of your own pocket.
So I changed the language of the resolution. I want to get it clear once again. So I put Usac commits to providing aid to Central American refugees via the allocations of $1,500 from its console discretionary fund that will be given to
the registered student organization only got the UCLA to use solely for providing support to refugees who will be transferred to Usac and student obligations.
Can you just take the one after it out?
Which one?
The one after it about
Oh,
White
yeah.
House's finance picture. And then my concern is the second levy for the result too. Like USAC supports aid or, because isn't the funding going to supply?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say a grammatical thing, is just adding and after refugees, because otherwise it sounds like the refugees are.
Right. If you wanted to add something at the end about like USAC stands in solidarity with, we're going to UCLA with Migrant Caravan, Exodus, whatever language that you want to use, I think that would be great too. Up to you then.
What's the term for stance? I don't like using that.
Okay.
Stance and solidarity.
Expresses its solidarity? Acts in solidarity?
Expresses it.
Okay. So while we're working on that, to think, again, I can't make a motion, but I'm going to say that there's probably going to be 3. First, suspend the bylaws. So we'll do an action vote on that. The second, we can do these in either order. So there'll be one that's the resolution, and that'll be traditional action item per normal. And then the one that will be the allocation of $1,500 from council discretionary to the UCLA. And all of this will be done in suspension of bylaws, but again, this is too important. Okay? Any last questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so we'll start with, is there a motion to suspend the bylaws to create multiple action items involving the resolution and council discretionary allocations?
I motion to suspend the bylaws to add action items in regards to the resolution and discretionary funding.
Absolutely. Is there a second? Okay, so let me just make a note of this in there. Okay, so suspend bylaws. Jamie makes a motion, Jessica seconds. Vote roll call beginning with IDP.
Yes.
EUD? Yes. General 1? Yes. General 2? Yes. General 3?
Yes.
CEC?
Yes.
CAP?
Yeah.
PAC? FSC?
Yes.
TSR? Yes. Great, by the 10 to 0 to 0, the motion passes and the bylaws are suspended accordingly. All right, so that's part 1. So part 2, whichever order y'all would like to do, is the allocation and the resolution. So, and what are you happy with the resolution? Do you want to wait on that for a second?
Can I have 1 minute?
Yeah. Do you feel comfortable with the other motion? If folks want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion regarding the budgetary allocations? Okay.
I would like to make a budgetary allocation of $1,500 from the Usac discretionary funds to UCLA.
Correct. Seconded by Robert? You.
No, it's okay. She starts to
Okay. So the motion is to allocate $1,500 from the council discretionary fund to UCLA. Wonderful. All right. Vote roll call beginning with IDP.
Yes.
EUD? General 1? General 2? Yes. General 3?
Yes.
CEC?
Yes.
CAT?
Yeah.
FAC? FSC? And TSR? My voting yes is 0. All right, by a vote of 10 to 0 to 0, the motion passes and $1,500 is allocated to the UCLA. And just let us know how we can support you in getting off money. Brian, my comment is wonderful. I'll be here all finals week. If you need to sign a rec, just let us know. Cool. Awesome. Okay, and then the last thing is the resolution. So. When you say, will you change of to in before providing, just grammatically? Supports Winnipeg UCLA in providing aid? No worries. Okay. Great. Great. All right. Folks, come back in. I think the resolution looks great. Do any other folks have Any friendly amendments, questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Is there a motion to pass the resolution as amended? Yeah. What do you
motion to pass the resolution on the plan to the refugee Central American Soccer.
And I will second.
Yes, she will.
All right, vote for roll call meeting with IBP.
Yes.
EVP? Yes. Diagram 1? Yes. Diagram 2? Yes. Diagram 3?
Yes.
CDC? Yes. CAP? Yeah. FAC? FSC?
Yes.
TSR? Yes. Great, once again, vote against the spirit. By a vote of 10 to 0 to 0, the resolution passes. All right. So we are going to move back into the non-suspended bylaws. I don't know if we need a motion to do that, but we're just going to say they're no longer suspended, they're back. And we do not have any more actions for tonight, so if you all need to leave, I'll be sad, but it's fine. Abandon that swing on the other
All on the same day. I'm screwed. I know you're the first.
All right, go study, good luck. Take care of yourself.
Wait, you're gonna be a wire ball.
Yeah, I'll get it. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Council members, do you feel like it's recess or do you want to stay for okay, go, great. All right, you're next. All right, folks. We're back.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Officer reports. Robert has to go first, so go for it.
Yeah, I just want to catch the bird before they deactivate. We're good. We're chilling in IDP. I made a mistake last time. January 22nd is the date of off-campus living fair, not the 20th. That's Martin Luther King. We're not trying to do that. So it's Tuesday. Other thing, good close with people is doing great. We worked with all of our neighbors this weekend. We worked with Bruce Sports, and they came and cleaned up the space and helped us organize everything. LGBT Center gave us all the extra clothes and ensured that clothing dry. I'm missing something. Oh, mobile clinic. We donated a bunch of our stuff to them because they needed it. So yeah, everything's going well. If you don't need anything from me, bye. I'm supporting FSC and FAC in their endeavors before the off-campus living fair to do stuff with housing. So I think kilos up. Bye.
And last time, please make it a habit of sending your things in by 5 p.m. on Thursday so you don't suspend bylaws.
I will not put you on the agenda. And y'all will still make an exception. Please, I will make an exception.
All right. Hello, everyone. A few things. First and foremost, appointments as of tonight are officially done. So I'm just really happy. So from there, I'm just going to be working on institutionalizing accountability mechanisms, cleaning up the bylaws, more info on that to come, but I'm really, really excited. Great. A couple other things. So my lead-in team is doing a fun Notes of Empowerment campaign on Bruno this week. They're giving out free blue books, scanned chalks, and pencils in exchange for writing a note of empowerment, and we'll be giving it to a relevant them-supporting organization. I will let you know what that is when we decide. So come stop by Bruno during the afternoon this week to do that. Next, I have my quarterly meeting with Vice Chancellors Beth and Gordon today. I will send you all the agenda. We talked about all sorts of things included urban planning, some of the policies like policy 110 and 133, some amendments and changes that can be made to Bruno and San Bruno. I won't talk to you about that kind of stuff. Just general campus safety and air quality situation. That's exciting, and then also, I have my quarterly police chiefs advisory council meeting on Wednesday, I will report back as to how that goes. Another thing coming up, I told James already, I'm part of a webinar that the Parent and Family Program is putting on next Wednesday, I believe 4 p.m. And it's myself and some folks from UCOP and Government and Community Relations. We'll be talking about student involvement and engagement in advocacy at the state, federal, campus-wide level. So if there's any things that you would like me to talk about, I'm going to try to speak on behalf of a lot of things that I know y'all are working on, but feel free to send that to me. And feel free to tune in to board next Wednesday and tell your parents, it'll be fun. And then last but not least, we are integrating our 17 interns into the office right now. We're in the process of placing them. And we also will be opening up applications over winter break for our winter internship program. It can be smaller cohort, but it will also be existing. We'll also be opening up a limited number of spots for Usac, predominantly for transfers and for folks that were abroad this quarter, but still want to be involved in Usac. So I'm not anticipating taking more than 5-ish, but if you have folks that are interested, feel free to send them my way. And that's it for me. Any questions? Yeah. Yes. So I am going to go ahead and send out an email, hopefully tonight, to everybody that had a parking permit this quarter, to see if they want it again. If you know for sure that you want it again, I can literally put you down the sheet right now. Do you want one again? Think for yourself, I can do it right now. And then just a reminder, I think Jessica said this, but they start on January 1st, right? So if you're gonna leave your car here over break, put both the fall and the winter parking permit up, so that way you don't get anything. I hope you're gonna, you want to include, right, Jessica? Yes. Great, so I will email everybody that, I believe we filled up all of the Usac allocations last quarter, so I'll email everyone that we already allocated to make sure that they still need it, but if anybody else, either any of you or members of your staff need it, let me know.
Wait, so people can leave their car over winter break?
Yes, as long as they have up both a fall and a winter parking permits, they're not ticketed because the winter permits start January 1st. Does that make sense?
Okay, so they just need to put both of them up on the.
Yeah, yeah, as long as it's in the lot for which they have a permit. So our permits are all on board.
But like for anybody else, like, they have to put it up in the lot that they got for winter or for.
So I'm not sure how it would work if they got different lots. I would say the same lot, just now.
So all of our permits are always for the same one. So that wouldn't happen for any of our pre-approved applications, but if a person is switching lots, then they may want to just talk to transportation directly and see how it's gonna impact them if they're not there over it. They might be able to get like a temporary parking pass for the lot that they're currently in, since it's free and it'll be slow until they move it. Doing that.
Awesome. Oh, and just comment briefly from Richard, he's working on filling his election board right now, interviewing folks to go through applications. Because we'll have a meeting next week, he's hoping to bring them before us, week 1 or week 2 winter quarter. So I'll circle back with you all when I get more information from him, but those are technically consent items, but I think we'll probably show opposition just so we can have more formal hearings for those. And so that's for all the positions on the board, so I believe it's vice chair, publicity, external endorsements, and investigations, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Oh, are you done? Election.
Yeah.
How is the comm board meeting?
Oh, yes, thank you. So we can talk a little bit more about comm board in our discussion edit about media, but basically there's 2 distinct issues. The first issue is that comm board doesn't believe, some individuals on comm board have heard that we have the ability to restrict media access even during the part of our public comment that's no audio, no video, and I tried to convey to them the intention behind it, and I kind of gave a series of examples, like let's suppose there was a student who was a victim of stalking, let's suppose there's a student who is not open about their sexual orientation, documentation status, etc. Let's say there's a student who doesn't feel comfortable being reported for whatever reason, and they didn't really seem to get it, because it was kind of, the conversation was, yeah, but freedom of the press kind of supersedes everything. And there was also an issue that policy is quantified as a separate USAC policy under IDP, it's not in our bylaws. So something that I'm considering and probably will be moving forward next quarter is to kind of quantify that in our bylaws, that we will have a section allocated for no audio, no video, so that we can endorse that a little bit more legitimately. Ultimately, though, what I think we need to do is try to work proactively with the organizations on campus to just achieve some community guidelines about we're not, we can't force you to do this, but will you respect why this exists? Does that make sense? I think in Daily Grind, we have an understanding in Daily Grind about how they're going to report in our meetings, but I don't know if we necessarily have that understanding with other media outlets as well. So that's something that I'm committed to working on next quarter, is just making sure student safety remains a priority, but Concord, again, didn't totally see by that, so it's kind of a hostile meeting. The Zero Zero Moscow for as well, but the second issue is just the executive session. But they took issue more with the public comment situation, but they didn't love executive session, and again, a lot of the adult representatives seem to understand the severity that some students that are on websites like Canadian are facing every day. So again, hopefully we can be proactive to kind of outline why we do what we do and quantify that more officially. And I do believe that they're working on sending us some sort of a letter of sorts about their disagreement with our conduct at that meeting, so just look out for that. We'll probably be pretty fiery, but that's okay. Does that answer your question? Yes. Cool. Any other questions about that? No? Cool. I've talked a lot, so we will move on to TVPs.
Yes, so this week we have 4 more in-district lobby meetings, so that brings our papers somewhere around. UC Path Town Hall is Thursday. You guys know how much the system is the bane of my existence. Please come. You can learn about the solutions to all different kinds of issues the students are having. You can get answers to what we need to do. We're going to have crew representatives there. Also, I have flyers. You can help me, take some, pass it around. The information for the Central Resource Center is on there. They are your first go-to people when it comes to solving your issues, because they are the most educated on what the system looks like and what you need to do to get help. There are various levels within departments and within the people who you're going to talk to on the service side at UCPAD about what you can do. These people are pretty much as expert as it gets, and we are very lucky to have this resource at UCLA. Other campuses do not have this, so take advantage of it. So far, the people that I have sent to this resource that have been having unresolved issues for weeks on end have had success going through the system. So please, please, please go to the system, refer people to the system. I'll be at the town hall on Thursday, and they'll have people that will be there until 3 p.m. from crew that can help you do troubleshooting on the spot. Some fun facts is that we actually got coverage on this issue, both in the Sacramento Bee, and I was on NPR this morning. My mom heard me on her way to work. She got her things stuck in. I forgot that KQB was NPR, so I didn't realize that it was gonna do that. So I was like, well, that's cool. But so we're definitely picking up a lot of steam just when it comes to coverage for this issue. And UCPAD is also taking note of that. So today when I went back to my old job to drop off these flyers, there was a UCPAD representative that was there talking to them about what they can do to take actionable steps to make sure that they're getting paid on time. I also have just basically become a caseworker. So if you go to crew and your issue is still not resolved, let me know, and I will email people that are even above that and can get you acting. I can get you people working directly on your case, because if you're having persistent issues, UCPAD wants to know, and I can continue to connect you to higher ups until you get it resolved. Okay, outside of that, I can figure things out. So also the Title IX public comment has opened. So you have until January 28th to make public comments on the federal Title IX policies. I'll keep you updated on any further actions that are organized, especially with UCSA. But for right now, I post the link on my Facebook, and I can also post the link in the group meet. It would be great for y'all to submit a public comment, encourage your offices to submit a public comment. Basically, the goal is that because they have to respond to every individual public comment that gets received, and so if this is something that they just get flooded on so many public comments that they can't respond to all of them before the deadline happens, then we can potentially just stop the policy if you need to be pulled out, which has happened before. But also, public comment is appreciated. It should happen in public comment. Yes.
I would really appreciate it if folks would copy me on their comments so I can reinforce the student position in anything that we submit from an administrative perspective.
Great, yes. Cool. And then, let's see, also, right, so like activities to finalize, we have like little informational pamphlets that we were creating. Figured it'd be a good way to kind of educate the public while we're waiting for the new legislative cycle to start. So those are going to be released this week. Probably after I finish my finals tomorrow when I have time to do the Facebook post. Also, me and Robert met with Mike today to talk about the signage policies and we are commitment to have ongoing conversations, and we're going to present him with some kind of like policy recommendations during like week 1 or week 2 of a quarter. My sole advisor is sole director right now. Yeah. And then also, kind of relevant to what Claire was talking about, CRT has a lot of work over winter break, and also there have just been like a whole bunch of different policies that people have brought up that they thought should maybe be relooked at. So I made a Google form. So like if there's something you want like revisited, you can just kind of fill it out so that way we can keep track of everything you guys want to see done. This isn't for like official changes that you want, like those should still be emailed to CRC so you can do like an official review, but if there's something that you're kind of like, I don't really think this policy does what it is intending to do, then you can fill that out, and you can like take a look at it, you can give us ideas for updates. Yeah, that's my spiel. Come to the town hall, please. We need to show them how, like, the more student turnout we have, the more they're gonna understand how big of an issue this is for people. Yeah.
Are people reaching out to like people working in HR? Because both of the people working in HR in my jobs hate UCPath. Like it took away all their power, and so it's like their job is basically just like fielding UCPath questions, and they don't get to do anything else, so they're pissed. So like,
yeah.
Do they have a say in what's happening?
So the way that UCPath, so the implementation of UCPath was actually meant to make it so those jobs didn't need to exist anymore.
Exactly. So it's not organizing for them.
Yeah. So I mean, our focus right now is like people need to get paid. That is a huge roadblock. And when it comes to that aspect of it, like that's something we can tackle later on. But at this point, like all of my energy is going into making sure the students are getting their paychecks. The communication with HR has been various because there's a certain role that people are playing in just being the people that are inputting their information, and so there is a lot of work that needs to be done at departmental level to like actually go back and like check and make sure that information is correct. We are actually seeing problems with departments where that's not happening, and UCPath doesn't have any control over it, but there's like this kind of back and forth on like HR is not understanding that that's like their role, and so they're not doing it, and they're referring people to other people. So that's kind of one of the big messages that we're trying to address with UCPath is like making sure that there is that communication that's happening. Yeah. And I think that there are steps being made because, and that was illustrated by that presentation happening with PLS today, because there hasn't really been much communication prior.
I'm just thinking if I was working HR, I would have very little motivation to learn UCPath. That means my job's gonna be gone.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's an issue that I don't personally have a solution to.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's kind of like messed up that the entirety, like the framing of the lucrativeness of the system was around the fact that these people wouldn't have jobs anymore. One of the reasons why it's costing 500 to 700 million instead of the intended 100 million is that these jobs have still been necessary to implement it. And so there's been this really interesting kind of like clash of morality around that conversation when it comes to like, we need the system to be affordable because having tuition exits this process, but also like, yeah, that's a whole other, like, I haven't even gotten into all my complicated feelings with like that stuff, but I hear you. It's frustrating. I don't really have an answer for that one.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
All right. Round 2.
It's kind of late, but I just wanted to, things are going fine in my office, but as I kind of mentioned a couple weeks ago, I just got elected as my sorority president, so I wanted to just keep bringing up like the IFC topic. And I have a little bit more insight now that I am like working closely with Pan-Hellenic Exec, and each fraternity was tasked with sending Panhellenic Exec a risk management reflection in which they kind of like line item list all the things that they're gonna hold their chapter accountable for, in terms of like their social events, that will have alcohol at them. So that is very good, like paper proof that we can kind of like utilize to keep, these houses accountable, but much more to go from there, but that's fine.
Yeah, the new IFC and Panhellenic residents were just selected, so we'll work on getting some engagement with those folks very early next quarter. If y'all are curious, the Panhellenic president is Bio Lee and Hi-Fi, and the IFC president is Josh Kaplan, Sigma Chi.
Are they, can we invite them to council?
Yeah, I definitely will. We'll try to set up some sort of forum that we wanted to do last quarter. Yeah, or this quarter, I guess, wow, this, excuse me, all right, general food.
Okay, so last week we wrapped up our efforts of positioning the foreign card requirements to have the national associate number on the back of foreign cards. We gathered almost 700 petitions, and yesterday the office released a letter on social media statewide vouching for the numbers we added. About 27 student orgs signed on to the letter supporting our demands, and we also released a letter from U.S. Senator from California, Dan Feinstein, who released a letter to us in support of our initiative. And then early next quarter, I and my mental health directors will be meeting with the director of the Foreign Country Department to deliver the petitions and letters so we can discuss what the next steps are, so we can make that demand a reality. Also last week, the office wrapped up the donation drive for the refugees for Central America. We got hundreds of donations that were given to Cosecha, a nonprofit organization, to deliver the donations this weekend to the refugees at the border. The office was able to also raise $1,057, which will be given to Galesnale, who use these funds for legal assistance and health resources for the refugees. And then I'm gonna give my time to Matthew, who actually went to the border. He's from my office, and he went to the border and gave those donations himself, basically.
So I went with Movimiento Cosecha, really great work. They have so many great activists there, like activists who are at Standing Rock, activists who've done so much. And so we went down to the border, we took up supplies from that was gathered last week from UCLA students, and there were so many, and Bernie's coffee shop was really all these organized, and took so much down. We took down the center in San Diego, and then we took truckloads of supplies over the border. It was kind of hectic. At one point, we had $1,000 worth of diapers sold from us by the military. But we got it in there, and then they have a lot of they're like directly connected to like the different Honduran states, to know like where the needs are needed and what places to go. So it was really effective to get the stuff there, and we took a good bit to the border, but we took most of it to the center in Barracol, which I have some photos of. I can just like briefly show on my laptop. They were very happy to get the supplies, and they were much needed. We had like a system where we can walk the trucks in to like make sure like it's not just like people who grab it, and like had lines so we could make sure like those who needed the most got the stuff. So like there's a little UCLA bag and a tent. There's someone who was happy to get some supplies. They were a couple, and they wanted to show off how they were sharing shoes that they got. Person happy to get some supplies. There's a lot of toys donated, and they're playing with the yo-yo. And another photo. And I'll be sharing a lot more photos, just so like people who donated can look at them and see like maybe the shirt that they donated. Be happy to know that's keeping someone warm. And then lastly, there's doing donation drive 2 this week at Bernie's Coffee Shop, and a lot of organizers. I know some people from UCLA who got more involved when going down with them to donate. And events on Facebook titled Donation Drive Refugee Caravan Round 2, and it's hosted by Bernie's Coffee Shop Volunteer Office.
Thank you. And then this week, the office launched the Week 10 Stories Forward campaign on social media. The Week 10 Forward campaign consists of UCLA students and faculty to raise awareness on immigration, sexual assault, environmental, and other social issues. Their stories and experiences are meant to bring awareness of how UCLA folks navigate through their hardships. We understand that week 10 and other weeks are filled with stress. So we hope that through the stories we shared inspire students during this time. And then lastly, today our sport campaign to raise funds for undocumented students was approved, and that campaign will launch next quarter, mid-February to mid-March.
Alright, facility superintendent. Oh, is
Uh,
Gloria
Gloria.
ready? For the record, Julia has lost her voice, and folks in public are confused.
And I'll lose it. Bag will be on Blowing Wild this Thursday from 1 to 4 p.m., giving our reusable straws and utensils to promote sustainable food practices.
Have a seat.
So, actually, so I have something to show you all. So, we got some money from financial wellness program, and we just picked up 63 eye clickers today. So we are going to donate these to help us to expand the FSC OID now at the Lona Library, which brings the total number to around, I think, 470 clickers, which is super cool. And these will be added so students can reserve them as early as for each quarter. Also, we just got approved for the funding to help on our textbook scholarship, so that's also another exciting thing that will come out of the office. And last, well, not last, but also something else in terms of like scholarships. So one of our goals this year was to expand the transportation scholarship that FSC has had for the past couple of years. We just got a budget transfer form that's been signed. We need to submit tomorrow to move 700 of our operational funds to the 1,000 to add to the $1,000 that transportation is providing FSC for a total of $1,700 that will be distributed to students for transportation scholarships. How we want to distribute these funds is we want to keep provide 10 $100 scholarships to students because that was the norm that has been established with the funds that transportation provides. But then with the money that was that is going to be moved from our operational budget, we want to provide bus passes for students, since not every student commutes by way of like their own personal vehicle. So we are looking to provide 14 fully subsidized bus passes for students in addition to the 10 parking, the scholarship that are help subsidize the cost of parking. So that is another exciting thing. Robert kind of mentioned this earlier, but FSC is also looking to organize an apartment hunting workshop before the IEP outcomes living there. So we actually just spoke to the financial wellness program, and we're going to collaborate for January 17th from 6 to 8 to have this apartment hunting workshop where students can learn about affordable housing options in Westwood, but also if they wish to lease an apartment, then build skills to be able to budget appropriately for the different expenses that come with living in an apartment. But I'm super excited that we are also going to focus on affordable housing options because there's this whole part in the presentation that talks about the University of Cooperative Housing, otherwise known as the co-op, which is really cool. And I know a lot of students who rely on that form of affordable housing that oftentimes isn't really publicized by many entities on campus. So we're looking to do that. We're also looking to collaborate back for that because we're trying to add a piece to that presentation that revolves around tenants' rights, so that students who are more well aware of what rights they have as tenants in Westwood. Let's see, and yeah, that's basically, we had a meeting with the growth part director last week, but we're still trying to, work around with the different policy stuff.
Awesome, great, thank you. CEC.
So we're screening the upside on Sunday, James Theater with development movies, featuring Kevin Hart, Bryan Cranston, and Nicole Kidman. It's kind of fun little cast there. In addition to that, we are going to be circulating just kind of a general survey, primarily through CEC's platform, but we also have a couple of other student work partners who are running circulating for us, just trying to gauge the perceived accessibility of our events. Because I think especially with entertainment, there's a lot that goes into like the dynamics of the event and how one can fully or potentially not fully be able to enjoy the event. And we have a lot of resources available to us to ensure that everybody can come and fully enjoy our events. But a lot of times they aren't utilized, and I think that it may be for lack of just knowledge about them or lack of knowledge that we can provide those. So before trying to kind of preemptively fix the problem, you just want to learn a little bit more about it. So I'm going to be circulating that. I would really appreciate it if any of you shared it. The people who are hoping to respond to the survey are students who have challenges with accessibility. But it could also just be from the general public who recognize the support coming. Something that I think needs to have a little bit of attention drawn to it. And we're working with some professors and other topics in the Center for the Disability Studies Department to get some feedback on how we're wording things. So it's been really exciting developing that with my assistant commissioner. And then lastly, we've been talking to a few different departments regarding bringing back our Jack Benny Award show, which is kind of a comedy award show. It's really exciting. So through the connections that Dr. Geller gave us, we've been able to speak with some different people at the Asian American Studies Department and the Center for Jewish Studies, talk about highlighting some potential honorees who would be relevant to each of those centers of studies and just seeing how we can those forefront. So it's really exciting. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have a report to give for SWC, CIC, or AOC?
I have a report to CIC.
Great, all right, go for it.
Okay, so the FSS committee is not going to be considering applications this quarter, but students are still free to apply. But all applications received no longer be considered for allocation during the employment quarter. The impact application is up. There's a basic thing they really appreciate it. If everyone is going or interested in sharing it in relevant spaces, they're typically trying to get students who are graduating to apply, as much knowledge and part of these work shows could be brought to the community, particularly those interested in community service. We have already ready to develop the nonprofit networking night interest forum, and we share that among your development communities. We're very much appreciate it. It's going to be on January 30th, so stay tuned for student registration information in the coming weeks. Alternative Breaks is getting ready to go on their winter break, so we'll share more about their experience with the staff. This winter there are 2 sites, one in Fresno and one in Seattle. With the prior exploring food insecurity and immigration in the Central Valley and allowing center on approaches to reducing stigma and creating long-term solutions for young people experiencing homelessness.
We don't have SWC. No. AOC. Okay. Kat.
Okay, yesterday we had concerts and we had 2 tactile luncheon forum and someone else. Today we did You Deserve a Break with AC. It was incredible. We ran out of plates. Only one person was injured, and it was Nadira. When we ran out of plates, people started throwing apples, and they wrote their problems on the apples. So love the innovation. Tomorrow is Word on Wednesday workshop. That one's fun, then you don't feel like you have to do it. And then the day after that, we're working with Studio 824 and VFS to put on Slice, which is a movie. Just kind of want to see it. What is it? We're also giving away a bean bag at that event, so I can get out of my office. It's in a box, it's brand new. And then after that, we are having a tiny desk concert, a teeny desk concert, it's copyright. Where one of our staff members, 2 of our staff members, there's so much talent in CAC, are going to be performing inside of our office to show off how cute it is this year.
When?
Really excited.
What a great question. I can answer this. This is the wrong flyer, but you know where the information is, Jay? On our Instagram. There will be updates. That's it.
Awesome. All right,
Administrator Brad.
I only want to exhort you all to study hard.
Okay, Dr. Johnson.
I want you to have a great week and go do anything that puts yourself at risk next Wednesday night tonight.
Just a quick housekeeping reminder, because over winter break, we do have a period of closure for the union. So one thing to just keep in mind is when we do closure, we will go around and do secure close, which means we lock down all of the doors and windows of every access point in the building because there's literally no staff here. So, within your office space, just make sure that there's a door, or if there's a window in your office, make sure there's a clear pathway. If you can, just shut it and lock it. If you can't, just make sure there's a clear pathway so that when you do the secure close, you can check. And if we need to close your window, we can do it for you. Same thing with like your door. Just make sure that you're taking all your personal things home, closing the door, making sure everything in your office is locked down and secure, because once you do the secure close, there's no access to the building, so you won't be able to get in, and hopefully, since there will be no staff, that there will be no unauthorized people in the building that shouldn't be here, so it's good to keep in mind to make sure that your offices are secure when you're moving.
When does that start? Because for facing break, I was one of those people, I left my suitcase in my passport in the office, and I just begged the CCLE to not be in second forever.
So I think it starts, it's the week of Christmas, I know that. And I think it's closed mostly through New Year's, and there's one day it's open for a little bit because of the basketball game on campus. But yeah, pretty much the 24th through the 2nd of January.
Yeah, it might be like the 23rd weekend, so
Yeah.
the 24th is.
Yeah, it might be right before that. The 24th is the holiday, so yeah, the 23rd, whenever the building closes at night, it'll be closed until New Year's, except for, I think just the little store will be open for basketball games. I don't think all areas of the evening will be open.
You wouldn't open Kirkhoff.
Yeah.
For basketball games, they'll open food service on the first floor in the store.
Just make sure that you take all your things with you. So.
Great. Thanks. Awesome. All right. So we have 2 discussion items. We can move through them quickly, hopefully. The first one was proposed by Bella, entitled Media Access and Distribution of Content Information. I was like half kidding when I suggested this, just because we were all kind of mad in the group meeting, but yeah, let's talk about it. I didn't get my number distributed, but I know everyone did.
Oh, yeah, so, I don't know, when I got the phone call, like, I thought it was just a big reporter, but when she said like, oh, like, cause she said something, cause I was saying like how my office did the all 11 million campaign, and she told me like to spell out million, cause she wasn't like understanding that. And I was kind of weird by that, but like, when I said the word, she's like, oh, like, don't think I'm dumb, I'm like, not even part of the Disney project, I'm just helping my friend who's part of that, so like, knowing that a non-media person got my number, I don't know, just weird me, like, cause like, I don't know, safety is like my number one, like, in my private like information, so my number, that was it, yeah.
Yeah, so two of like my closest friends at UCLA have written to me really good, one of them has been like, one of their editors in the past. And like when I heard about all of this and just thought like, I remember she would get students' numbers and I always thought it was through a database or something. So I started talking to her about it a little bit. And they don't have, because I know about the directory, they don't have like a student directory that they can go and get anyone's numbers. They get them like through other sources, like through, if they've been given out to someone. And I think at the end of the day, like the reporters, the relevant reporters having their numbers, I personally think that that is permissible because it is their job and they're not trying, like we, under, you know, our understanding of our relationship with them, they're not trying to do anything that would put us at risk. But I think in that instance, because I did bring that up with her, and she's worked like in their like directorial staff, so I think that she had a pretty good view of it. That is something that you may want to report, because I also had multiple reporters messaging me, so I think that the distribution of work for this one feature was a little bit messy, and it can get that way sometimes. I heard a lot of complaints when my friend was an editor about how sometimes when they're just distributing assignments, it can get really messy. So I think that was the case here, and that's why we have like multiple reporters texting us. But I think that with that situation, it was just an oversight on the part of the individual reporter, and I do think that that's something that it's not within their, like, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. And when I told my friend about that, she was thinking that is something that would be kind of in terms of some kind of violation, because it is like going against their kind of confidentiality thing with the people who they're hiring. And it's not public information that they have our contact information other than our emails. And so she said that that's something that you can just report like to the campus politics editor. And I think that's something that you move forward with if you feel, because I do think that is something that's concerning. But Justin, I just wanted to speak on behalf of like my views in terms of them having our contact information. We are public officials, so I think that the press having access to us is absolutely necessary. And although we do all have telephones in our offices, it's not like we have constant staff in our offices who are managing those phone lines as a public official in actual government. So I think that them having access to our phone numbers is very necessary. But if someone has a stipulation where, like I think Julia has said, like you wanted to during the email, because that's more substantive for you, it's just something that needs to be communicated. But I do want to stand by the fact that I really wasn't finding myself agreeing with a lot of the sentiments that were being raised, because I think we do need to give press access to us.
Sarah? I feel like I disagree with that though, because my phone number is for my friends and family. And like, yes, I'm an elected representative, and that's why my email is public knowledge, but like, for you to have immediate access, for like, if my phone vibrates, I'm gonna look at it right away, because I think it's a friend, family, loved one, etc. But when I open my phone and I'm in the middle of setting, it's like, hey, we need a comment right now, you have 5 minutes. I'm like, fuck, like, I'm not checking my email because I don't have 5 minutes to give you. If I do, I'm gonna go open my email in the first place. Also, someone from Daily Growing gave my phone number and email to someone at KCRW, which is like, what? And it was for comments on NSJP, so it wasn't even relating to this position. So I'm almost Team Malik, where I'm only gonna give comments to feminists. Because, I mean, they don't fuck up.
I think that that's another public safety point where you should reach out to them and check the oversight violation. And I think, again, we just need to set the precedent of how we want to be communicated with, but they do need to have access to us in some form. And so via email, where it's something that you can manage a little bit more at a distance, I think that's totally respectable. But just coming from someone whose commission has been put on Daily Growing Stonewall for not giving them access, I just like have really thought about, I was thinking about it pretty deeply over the weekend when we were talking about it. But I totally respect like not wanting to interfere with your like role as just a person. And so I think that maybe if there's a way that we can establish like the precedents for how we want to be communicated with, I mean, I'm sure that they'd be comfortable granting that, or I would hope that they'd be.
Absolutely. Feel free to enforce that yourself. Like I personally tend to enforce a policy of I will give comments via email and via email only. And if you convey that to one reporter or to Melissa, who's the politics editor, I think generally they'll respect that. I mean, if it's something really quick, it's for a moment, then fine, but okay.
I just want to know, like, is anyone from the Daily Growing?
The editor in chief, actually.
Oh,
Hi.
Sorry. Hello. I just have a question about like what the standard is for emailing answers to questions, because I was allowed to do that once, and then me and the reporter were like, okay, we're gonna do that through email, but then they said, oh, my editor said never mind. So then we had to like find a time to do an on-call email. So I just want to know like what the what's permissible for emailing answers and what's not.
Yeah. So now it kind of varies. If you can get some kind of statement, if it's something very quick, easy, email is usually the way to go with that. Generally though, for more explicit comments, more straightforward, like more like in-depth kind of conversation, that they probably want more of a phone call. It really depends. Last year, the policy was that you couldn't take any email statements at all, had to be completely just over the phone or in person, and that just wasn't always gonna work. We had a deadline or whatever, and so we kind of just said we needed to kind of be more flexible with that. So.
Can you speak to at all why Eduardo's like, is that ever like suggested, like, or could you find?
As far as sending out people's contact information?
People not in the daily room?
Yeah, so that's very much not what we do. We only share our source information with other members of the daily room, or at least that's the policy that we're supposed to enforce. If that's happened, then I apologize. I'm not sure where the communication was with that or how it kind of came to be. But obviously, it's not something that we condone. So great rights you guys are also private individuals and you have your own identities and you understand those.
I know it's like week 10 and stuff, but maybe you could like find the person that like emailed you in the first place that you gave the phone number to and let him know and speak to that individual.
How do you get our phone numbers in the first place?
Mostly by asking. That's that is a talent spot. There isn't again an interaction that we kind of reference for that. It's mostly just by talking to people, either directly or other people.
So like if I gave my phone number to someone during election season, is it like something that's added to like a Excel or something later on so that someone else can get it without having to ask for my number again?
So when we pass along to the next editor or the next person.
There are ways where we can change that. So that like there's always an email first asking, hey, can I have access to your phone number before just like taking it from a different reporter. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Again, I would argue that's important that our reporters have full access to our sources, and so I can't promise anything. But that's usually just the way it goes. For us, we realize that the most easy way to contact people, and that's how we approach mostly.
Any comments, questions, concerns? Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's all good.
Seriously. Great. All right, we will move on to our last item on the agenda. Jessica, Council Communication Platform.
So I just wanted to bring this as like a start of like the conversation. I just started to feel, I mean, personally, like I know here at UCLA that how we get informed of like everybody's like different organization events, usually comes down to Facebook. And personally, I've like got back on Facebook like starting last year, and I still can't. Like it's just so much. I feel like noise on social media, and I actually want to be able to support a lot of your events. It's just so like personally, I just feel like I see an event on Facebook, and then I see another event, and I see another post, and I think grouping is great. I just think sometimes like when we really get into a conversation, we're like, if I'm not immediately like in the conversation, sometimes I can't like catch up with everything that's happening. So I was wondering maybe as like council we would consider moving to another like maybe Slack or another platform, just because I think grouping is kind of like, it's hard because we only meet once a week. And so I would just like, and I mean, we just talked about how busy we all are too. And I think it'd be nice to be able to like have like a more organized communication, because the reason why I wanted to start the conversation, and it's just super short because I want to put this on, is that I think as like a undergraduate student council, maybe there's certain, like, I think too, it would be nice, we do so many events in different offices, and usually like we come here to the table on Tuesday night, but after Tuesday night, we're very much focused on our office, and I know we put a lot of pressure on election board as well to be the one to get people excited about USAC and get excited about elections, but I personally think that as the Undergraduate Student Association Council, like that's more of our responsibility than election board, and so I think really starting winter quarter, I think we need to start as a council, like being, not focusing less on our offices, but I think there might be more like collaboratively that we can do about USAC in general. That doesn't have to be like an individual office program or event. And so I think maybe having our communication not be so, I don't know how to describe grouping, but it's like a giant text message. I feel like it would be nice to maybe like have it organized in like different channels, or just knowing that if we wanted something USAC related, like that's in a specific place. or if we wanted to talk about something like office related, that's another place. And just wanted to like clean up, I think, our communication within Usac a little bit. Not saying none of you communicate, just like, there's just a lot, there's just a lot, like, on social media, so. I don't know how you're feeling about all that, because I kind of wanted to bring this conversation with the other council members, and bring it up to like, being more accessible as a council, and then what we can do as like, all of our offices to, yeah, that was it.
I mean, for me personally, I kind of hate Slack and I don't check it. And you will lose me if you use Slack personally. And I feel like that's just kind of a like 50% of people love it and like 50% of people that open it. I will say that kind of once my office switched to Slack, our ability to function and communicate as an office drops significantly because a lot of people stop looking at it. So I don't really know what the best answer is for increasing communication, but I don't think that Slack is at this point the answer to facilitate.
Yeah, because I honestly, like, personally, I wasn't sure if like, Slack, it was just like an example.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, just for that point.
I'm really with you, but, oh, sorry, Jimmy.
What do people use in their offices commissions?
Last year's chief of staff, when we used Slack, it was a complete disaster. It was the same situation, like no one was responding to things, but this is a smaller group of people, so it's not like we have to ask 50 people to download Slack and figure it out. But it was a disaster, and the office pretty much decided to move to GroupMe after about a quarter. And this year, my office is just using GroupMe because of what happened last year. So I don't know, but I've also seen Slack used successfully. My sorority just got it, and they're really into it. So. Yeah.
In my mind, there has to, like, I think every single person has to be on the same page. Like, I think all of us have to be on the same page on what we're going to use, because in my experience, when like 75% of people are on Slack, it's those 75% of people that like are probably going to use it consistently, and everyone else is just going to slack off. I will say, like let's not slack off. But like for example, so over the summer I worked as a national youth supervisor. But anyhow, our staff is like 90 something people, and I mean the boss says you gotta get on Slack, and so what the boss says, and like you can bet all 94 of us are on Slack. So like, you know what I'm saying? But there's that, so it's like I think it works when there's like that level of like enforcement, like you have to do it because it's, you know, versus like if we're all on, you know, that's what I'm saying, either we all commit to something or we like figure something out. It's like Slack can be very successful. And in my experience using Slack this year on a staff of 94 people was a lot more successful than having group meets like we did the summer beforehand. But again, it's only as successful as we all choose to commit to.
Not to be a point just about events or getting lost, it's just those, everyone had access to the Usac Facebook page and just being better about posting your events on the Usac Facebook page itself, and so that can kind of be a media or a medium for all of the events, if that makes sense. I don't really have like, I can go with Slack and go with GroupMe personally, but maybe because like we're the ones I guess responsible for posting on the Facebook page, just trying to do a better and more intentional job of making Usac or share your page. I believe all of you have access. I'm not going to know. I'll go check right now. But at the very least, like I can try to commit to sharing more events when I see them.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of like the conversation about how like we communicate in general, because I think Facebook too, like, you know, we're all admin, but it, like, I don't necessarily know what each of our roles within the office like is with advertising Usac outside. I don't know any. It's just like for someone that is a transfer student and like hasn't been in this space nearly as long, I think like there are certain things we can do as an organization overall, like a little bit more clear and like communicative and make it not so like Usac is this entity that's hard to reach and access. It would just, I think it'd be nice to have like all of us as an office working specifically on like Usac itself.
Does it have to be us though, or can you like a marketing person do it?
Yeah, and I think it's more of like
I think we just need a body, whether that be us or somebody. I think sometimes we're so busy focusing on our offices, like, honestly, it's really hard to just look at USAC itself and like what we can do more as like an undergraduate council. And so I don't know if that means like having a separate body, like adding in like another person who's like on this table, all they deal with is like the marketing and stuff for USAC and like assessment stuff. I don't know. I just wanted to kind of put it on.
Yeah, I think that I really agree with you in terms of if someone mentions something and maybe another council member is interested in like reading something, it is kind of like you're being kind of into that kind of conversation because it's all one long flowing conversation. And I personally love Slack. Like everyone acts like Slack is nerdy or something, but you can do party parrots on it, you can do fun reactions, like I really like it. And I think that it opens the door up for conversations about collaborations between offices, for conversations about stuff like e-board that we talk about a lot here, but then can't always continue the conversation, especially not very substantially in an area or in a space like a group meeting. So I really see where you're coming from with that. And I don't know, I think that Slack is a lot better for discussion, but then at the same time, you know, we are all really busy with our offices, so maybe this one, or this meeting per week is like the time where people really just want to be council members. That at all. That's what so I don't know.
Maybe let's think about it. Do you agree with that?
Well, I guess I'll say something. I think, like, I agree with what's been said. USAC feels like totally. And I think it was a bigger problem last year, which I don't think it's been as bad this year, but last year there was so much like co-opting spaces and programming because no one was keeping. Like, how can we work together outside our offices? I think it's a really great question. And obviously, like 2 hours or 3 hours a week is, I don't really think enough to achieve those goals. So I think that could be very useful to them. That's all.
Let's think about it, maybe.
If we do switch to Slack, can we like a Slack training? I've been on Slack for at least a year and I don't understand it.
Yeah, I have made Aiden sit in front of me like so many times, I still was like, and he's so great.
Do y'all ever something funny? So my dad works for the LA Times when we went to New York. His friend gave us a tour of the New York Times. And I was like in like the copy editor, like big like conference room, and they're all on their computer just like typing away at Slack. Well, like at first I noticed one person typing away at Slack, and I had a turn on recording it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. Why are they on Slack? And he's like, everyone at the New York Times and the LA Times uses Slack to communicate with each other.
Yeah. You can also like create private channels on Slack. Customize reacts.
Yeah, the reaction you can do is so cool. You can like make a space to react.
You can make like their space and emoji react. Yeah.
I don't like all the options. That's
It's like a campus.
Let's table this discussion and think about it. Maybe come back week one with a better idea, but it is time to get almost done. So, all right, any old business, any last announcements, questions, comments, concerns? Yeah.
Can I say something very briefly about the maybe for next quarter, the new requirement of us being more timely?
Yes.
Agenda items. I feel like three school days, which if you look in the bylaws, it's been in there since like 2003, 2004. Like with council members, even bringing computers to council in. I don't think it's like necessary that we submit our stuff on Thursday night. Like so much happens Thursday, Friday, even the weekend. Like send an email and people read out and forward to the that hard. It's changing that date to Friday or even Saturday.
Let them know.
So
the reason you submit your agenda items early is not for each other.
Right.
It's for your constituency to have time to be able to see what you're going to be discussing and decide if they want to be here to make public comment or to listen. It's not fair to assume that all of your constituents do have access to electronics and things like that. And so, or that they're available on as little notice as you all are. So I caution you about making your agendas available to your constituents over the weekend when they're not necessarily here on campus and with access.
But maybe we can talk to Robert about, like, even though they still have to go out by Friday at 5 p.m., Robert would let us send it in by, yeah, I don't think it says about that we have to send to the IVP 24 hours in advance, does it?
I think it's like 3 days before, three school days.
You can look at how much time the IVP needs to get it turned around.
Yeah.
The piece that's really critical is when they're posted.
Right, which is Friday.
Not so much when they
Yeah.
get to him.
Yeah. So possibly if Robert's okay with it, we could ask him if it would be okay if we turned it in by like Friday at noon or something, if he's okay with it. Just make it consider, but yeah. Any other questions, comments, concerns, announcements? No? All right, I will adjourn this meeting at 9:53 p.m. Where's the attendance sheet? Oh, right here. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off Usac Live, and we're gonna move into a hopefully quick good and welfare.